Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the budget workshop of the Cape Coral City Council. Today is January 19th, 2024. This meeting now comes to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I call the roll, I would like to announce that Councilmember Welsh is to arrive after roll call. Mayor Gunter,
Here.
Council Members Carr,
Here.
Costin, Hayden,
Here.
Long,
Here.
Shepard,
Here.
Steinke.
Here.
I have 7 present and 1 excused.
Thank you. Item 5A is Parks and Rec Master Plan. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank you all. I didn't get to yesterday for a good discussion and our ability to kind of work through some fairly complex topics. So we'll be continuing discussing them and how we will address some of those things through the budget this year and in the coming years. Today's agenda moves along the same line, kind of thinking of the bigger picture. We have on the agenda the Parks and Rec Master Plan, our comprehensive plan, Pine Island Road corridor plan. We'll break for lunch, then we'll go over the Weir and Bridge master plan, and then have a closing discussion about the impact fees that support the rest of those plans. We're coming into almost 2025 next year. Budget will be the 10th year of our Parks and Rec Master Plan. And so our Parks and Rec Director, Joe Petrella, is going to give you a presentation on where we are. And as part of our budget process heading into next year, we'll be looking to update the master plan. As you all know and you saw from the growth model, we've had many residents since 2016 join us in Cape Coral. In addition, we've had some residents that have sold and moved, and so we've had some turnover in existing housing stock. And so with those new residents, both from growth and turnover, there may be different values, different quality of life needs that our residents would like to see. And so it's a good point to look at revising and refreshing the Parks and Rec Master Plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joe.
Good to turn it on, right? All right, good morning, Mayor and Council. Joe Petrella, Parks and Recreation Director. Today I'm going to go over our master plan and what we've accomplished over the last 10 years. Well, 9 right now, going on our 10th, and where we plan on going in the future. So I just want to cover briefly some of the benefits of Parks and Recreation master plans. First of all, they establish a long-range vision, and as the city grows, that vision needs to continually be updated. It prioritizes our capital improvement plans. It fills in gaps in redundancy, so we reduce redundancy throughout the system so we don't see the same things over and over, especially in our programming. It builds community support, all that community engagement that we get when we're out there speaking to the public, and then we start showing how we've accomplished those goals. You start getting that support from the community, which is huge for us as a department. Big one for us also is identifying potential private and public partnership opportunities within the community. As we continue to develop these parks and build our infrastructure, and we got to find alternative funding sources and not just rely always on the general fund or our capital improvements program. Recommends opportunities for future developments, set strategy for amenity life cycles and replacements, and aligns investments with the current needs of the community as a whole. It's just important to note that maintaining an up-to-date plan, usually every 10 years, is very important. It's an industry standard throughout the nation, and it helps us ensure the plan will continue to align with goals and objectives of the organization as demographics change within the community. And we all know demographics are rapidly changing here in Cape Coral. So just to go over what the top 10 facility and program needs for the 2016 master plan. And if we look at the facility needs, number one's been the beach, small neighborhood parks, nature parks, indoor fitness, and we have a list of them there. Those are, and large community parks are the first 5 for facility needs. And from a programming perspective, special events, adult fitness and wellness programs, adult programs age 50 plus, adult continuing education, and nature and environmental education were the top 5 there. As we go through this presentation, we'll see that we've hit a lot of these needs with over the last 10 years, which is, to me, very exciting in regards to that, because I've been in several communities that have done master plans, and the community puts it on a shelf and they don't follow it and go through and start building those, building on the recommendations from the community, previous city councils, current city councils, city managers, and also the department's efforts to move the department forward. So I find this very encouraging as we continue to plug away at some of the things and grow as a community. So one of the biggest things that I think, recently we opened up Joe Coviello Park, and we will be opening Yellow Fever Creek soon in the spring of 2024. As you can see, we've met several needs that were laid out within the master plan, which is number 3, nature parks, building nature parks, large community parks, trails, and fishing areas. There'll be a fishing spot over at Yellow Fever Creek, and programming, adult fitness and wellness, and nature and environmental education with our education center there. 4 parks recently opened in 2023, Del Prado Linear, Gator Trails Park, Cultural Park, and Sands Park. All those have been provided great opportunities for recreation within the community. If you go to any of these parks any given day, there's people in there playing basketball, pickleball, whatever it is. But it really it helps us build our infrastructure with small neighborhood parks, large community parks, and our trail system, which is definitely our top 5, within the top 5 of what was established back in the 2016 master plan. Lake Kennedy Racquet Center is set to be open sometime here in spring 2024. It looks like they're getting ready to pave out there, but it's raining, so they're having a hard time kind of getting those crews out there. But this is going to be a huge game changer for us here in Cape Coral. We've got a lot of things planned. We're ready. We've gone through trying to figure out our management company selection, so we're working on that currently. But this is going to accomplish 3 more needs for us on a programming side of things, and that's adult fitness and wellness, adult programs for 50 years and older, and adult sports programs. They'll also accomplish a lot of other things in the future, which I think we'll cover in a little bit when I talk about the demographics changing within the community. Number 1 program need was special events within our program side of things, and we've added 6 new events within the last few years. Recently we had the New Year's Eve ball drop, which was actually a really great event. I attended it, had fun down there, people were having a good time, and it was definitely well received by the community. The Reindeer Run is a growing program that we're continuing to grow. Music and Arts Fusion Walk, Culture Fest, Trunk or Treat, holiday tree lighting, which if you had been out there on either of those, trunk or treat and holiday tree lighting, there's barely any walking room, so that's exciting as we continue to grow. I'm not going to go get every one of these, but we've improved on our park system based on some of the recommendations throughout. We've added new pavilions, shade structures, playgrounds, walking pads, new field lighting, plethora of things that we've done in multiple different parks throughout the community. We still have a long way to go. We're still working on this list, adding things with Project Sparkle, and working on continuing to build on improving our park infrastructure and ensuring the life cycle and long-term success of the system that we currently have. You know, this really was something I thought was amazing. The plan had a plethora of recommendations laid out in it, and in this plan we accomplished 23 different recommendations, and we've implemented them. This is huge to me, and this brings a lot of, to me, it shows a commitment to Parks and Recreation within the community, that we're putting the plan out there and we're willing to engage the community and put investments back into the system. Design and construction and permit of new neighborhood parks, we've done that. Acquired land for new large community parks. Developed master plans for neighborhood and community parks. Design, permit, and construct improvements at Yellow Fever Creek Park. Prepare management plans for natural parks, which we're currently working on. Burring Owl Wildlife Habitat Education, which we're also working on currently, and that will be part of our program up at Yellow Fever Creek as well. Develop a master plan for expansion renovation of the yacht club, and we're working on that currently. Develop a master plan expansion renovation of the cultural park, which was completed. Expand, renovate the cultural park, again, completed. Master plan for Festival Park, we've been working on that. And designate acquire land for new tennis and pickleball complex, which is currently under construction. Again, the pickleball complex, number 20, master plan for that. Design, permit, and construct the complex. We're currently in progress. Designate acquire land for new sports complex. That was up at Festival. Develop a master plan for the new sports complex. Again, continue to work on that. Upgrade athletic field lighting. We're trying to transition everything over to Musco lighting currently right now to have one system. Improve existing freshwater boat ramps. Improve water access at other city parks is what we've been currently working on. Design, permit, construct new trails and bikeways. We've identified potential partners to develop additional programs and special events. And currently we're in the process of our maintenance management plan. Our new park superintendent's been working hard on getting our standards set, so we have a plan set for the next, each year, and what our plan's gonna be throughout the next 10 years. Developing an emergency action plan, and currently we are also working on creating a succession plan. So we're excited about the things that we've already done, but we have so much more to still build on. And again, we have a lot to work, but we're happy on the progress we've made so far. So what's goals for the 2026 master plan, goals and objectives? We need to continue building off the accomplishments and recommendations established in the 2016 master plan. We should be reassessing the current state of the system while projecting focus areas based on comprehensive assessments of community priorities and values for a 10-year period. The rapid growth of the city over the last 10 years has really had an effect on will have an effect on certain focus areas and change priorities. As we know, we've got a lot of younger people moving into the community, and we saw from our priorities list, there was a lot of adult programs and a lot of 50-plus programs. I can see that flipping with the new needs assessment, having a mix of having some needs for our youth, our teenagers, and individuals 20 to 35. I think that's going to be something that's going to be, I project we'll see coming in the new master plan as we develop it in the next coming year. Establish a long-range vision and recommendations for parks and recreation services. Identify potential partners. Prioritize comprehensive improvement plans and explore the revenue streams, as I mentioned earlier. Now, the estimated cost of the project is around $150,000. It should be about a 12-month to 14-month time period to go through the project, and we'll be setting up steering committees and things of that nature to make sure the project is well received in the community and engaging the entire community to ensure that we see success again and build off what we did in 2016. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. I open up for any input or any questions from council.
Just one question, are we hiring a consultant to accomplish the new master plan, or are we doing it in-house?
It would be a consultant.
Any idea when we will bring that consultant on board? I would assume that you're trying to have that plan at least established by 2026.
Correct, yeah. So once we know it's approved within the budget process, we'll get the scope of the work done prior to the approval, so we're ready to go right away. So in October, we'll get the RFP out. Once we get the bids in, we'll hopefully get it started by January, early February at the latest, because it's like I said, it's 12-month to 14-month process, and we want to be ready by January, February of 2026.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mayor, I had one.
Go ahead.
Joe, did the 2016 master plan, or will the upgraded master plan include anything, and I'm not sure what category it would fall into, but the need for swimming facilities, the need for community centers where we are deficient in those areas? Are those types of things we're going to be looking at beyond what's on the list?
Yeah, when we do the needs assessment and we put it out to the community for the statistically valid survey, those will be options that will be put on there to see if the community wants those in the system. So that'll be, I project it'll rank higher as we get a younger crowd, residents moving in. So yes, it will be part of the selection is that people can choose when they're taking the survey or in public meetings and comment.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I guess I got to follow up on that. I guess it's great to know that we need it, right? The community needs it. We know we need indoor facilities. Our own plans tell us that. We know that we need aquatics. So at what point do we actually take action in doing that? I guess that's something that we have to collaboratively try to decide as far as budget appropriations when we figure this out, because for years we say we need it, we know we need it, we know we need it. And it's cool to say that we need it on a piece of paper, but at what point do we finally take some traction and move forward in doing what we all know we need? I mean, we've got a survey coming. Sure, we know what the survey is going to say. The same thing the last several have said. So I guess that's maybe to your point.
Yeah, I think hopefully discussion kickstarts that momentum so we can get it done. Yeah, I think we're to the point now where we've talked about it. We know that we understand the deficiencies. We know the needs. So it's going to be time to move forward. To me, soon.
Yeah, I'd be happy to support any thing that creates some positive momentum in that direction. One other question, Joe. You mentioned, I don't know the exact language you used in the slide, but it had to do with plans for maintenance and upkeep, I guess, to limit it. That to me sounds like what we kind of tried to bridge the gap on last year with the Sparkle allocation. So is that basically in lieu of that? How are we budgeting that stuff going forward? Is some Sparkle to some degree going to be funded in this year's budget? Is that a plan, or are we going to roll that into some other fund for maintenance?
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Mike. Sorry. I know we've been working on trying to build a deferred maintenance fund within our budget, and I think currently it sits as deferred maintenance Operation Sparkle. So one of my goals is to build a 10-year asset management plan and build out those 10 years of what we're going to need within the budget each year moving forward. So that's what we're currently working on. Steve, our park superintendent, and his crew are out there constantly assessing what's going on out there. So yes, it is part of our plan.
Okay. And then in this year's budget, 24, we allocated over $1 million, I think, right? 1.5, if I remember correctly.
There's several million in there for parks maintenance.
As part of the Sparkle
Yes.
that we provided last. Can we at some point in the calendar future get an update on where that's at, where that pot sits, and what some of that stuff might be earmarked for?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have that. I can get it to you shortly. We have a quarterly update coming up from Mike, so we'll get it over to you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
So on the Sparkle, the concept was, at the time before we opened up all these new parks, we had like 36 parks in the system. And so the idea was if we can go through there and do a comprehensive assessment of site conditions, facility conditions, programming conditions, furniture, fixture, equipment, and get all that put down, then what we would do is basically sweep through like 3 parks a year. And so if you think about that, and that's why he's looking to build a 10-year plan, essentially you're doing 3.6 parks a year, refurbishing and refreshing all of them. And then the play equipment and all those other things, if you get put them on a life cycle, then you're just budgeting for those life cycles unless something happens sooner. This way, air conditioners, playgrounds, fencing, all of it, paving in the parking lot, it's just all on a life cycle, and it just gets budgeted moving through. The Parks and Rec master plan that we have now, with the $60 million worth of, at the time, $60 million worth of improvements, called for a 5% maintenance increase in the park's budget annually for those new improvements. So back in 2016, for all the value of those improvements, it called for basically $3 million a year in additional parks funding to maintain all the 7 new neighborhood parks and the 4 community parks. So we're trying to build Parks and Rec's budget. We have Sparkle for all the old parks, which we're trying to get adequate resources and a programs that they can fund through them. Plus, we have to start incrementally increasing, their budget for all the new parks. Even though the stuff is brand new, they're pretty heavily used, and so things break, the accidents happen.
Okay, so the Sparkle to me by the name itself is just sort of like a stopgap, refresh. So we're talking about paint, we're talking about, I think at some point, pressure washing sidewalks, small stuff like that as far as maintenance to bring it up to acceptable levels. And then there's an additional fund that you were talking about as far as moving forward, deferred maintenance and that sort of thing. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think something else that will be important in this Parks Master Plan, once we identify the projects and how we want to move forward, of course, we got to look at the funding mechanism. And as we all know, that basically you have a couple different types of funding mechanism, but one of those mechanisms is very similar to the 2018 Parks Go bond. I think it would be important, and once we develop and identify what those projects are, is if we just move forward using general fund dollars, how long it's going to take to accomplish, say, that top 10 priority list, versus if we have a Parks Go bond, because I know we've had that discussion for a phase 2, how quickly we can get those projects done. Then I think we can show the community, if we just do it with general fund dollars, estimated time to get these 10 projects, the top 10 priorities is X. But if we do a additional Parks Go bond, we can do it in X amount of time. And they can make the determination, whether we move in the one fashion with just general fund dollars or a Parks Go bond. So I think that would be helpful, especially when we are trying to show this plan to the community, and it kind of gives them a sense of how long it's going to take to get these projects on board and up and running. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, I think we can add that to the scope of for our contractor as well to kind of help us guide through that. So,
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for the update, and we'll move on to the next item. 5B is the City Comprehensive Plan for Community Beautification. Mr. City Manager.
I thought you wanted to speak.
Don't everybody jump to the mic at once.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Omar Leon, our city arborist, is going to give this presentation.
Usually we're at tag team.
Okay. So the purpose of this presentation is to get you to think possibly about a different way to change the way we are currently moving forward with beautifying the city. As you all know that have been on the council and council member cards, you'll see going into this budget process, typically the way we've been funding medians has been through a process of identifying $1 million or $2 million and allocating that towards a median. And with the most recent price escalations that we've had in the last couple of years, it's cost us about $800,000, almost $1 million a mile, once you include curbing, which is now required due to the Florida Green Book. So if you think about that kind of budget allocation and think about all of the lane miles of medians that we have in the Cape, it's going to take us forever. The population will be built out before our medians are complete. And one of the things that we hear a lot is when I go to other cities, they just look beautiful because the roads I'm on, they have curbs and landscaping, and we lack that. So I challenge staff to come up with a way to think about how can this council or in the community complete beautifying everything that has irrigation water available within 5 years. So if we look at all of the big picture items that we have going to change the image and the aesthetic value of the city, we've got the pedestrian bridge that we've looked at. We've been reviewing plans for the yacht club, and so this finishing piece while you're driving to and from areas of the Cape was an idea of how can we put a plan together to improve all those and be done with them much sooner, so that no matter where you go, where there's irrigation, the community, the residents, the businesses around have beautified medians.
Thank you. So good morning, Council. Omar Leon, City Arborist. This presentation, I'll be doing the first half, and then the Finance Director will be presenting on the second half. So I wanted to give you guys a brief breakdown of the current status of the beautified medians within the city itself. We currently have about 38 miles of medians that are under maintenance contract. These are improved curved medians that are being maintained by city landscape contractors throughout the years. These have been slowly maintained or enhanced. We additionally have about 6 miles of medians that are enhanced, that are not curbed, but have been enhanced over the years. You know, some of these include areas of El Dorado, Surfside. Now we have some areas within Rose Garden and Chiquita as well. When you look at the city as a whole, there's roughly about 99 miles of remaining of unimproved medians. 5 of these miles are actually curbed, but they remain unimproved. South of Pine Island Road, or most of the areas, this includes most of the areas that are under irrigation or have available irrigation, we have about 35 miles of unimproved medians within those specific areas.
So if you take that, just say it's 100 at $2 million a year, we're looking at 50 years to complete all the medians under the current level of funding. And so we're talking about, you know, if you think about the growth model, we're going to have full build out, you know, in 20, 25 years. We're looking at 50 years to even complete the medians on the current trajectory.
So under the current process for construction, as the city manager had mentioned previously, we have a 4-phase process. You have the engineering design phase, which is where we look at access management, curb design, bringing up the roadway up to the updated roadway safety standards for engineering design. We then move into the landscape design, which is looking at how do you landscape these medians per the Green Book standards that we abide by, and also how do we landscape these medians based on the adopted theming and intensity levels that we have throughout the city. Right here on the right is the recently adopted theming and intensity level throughout the entire city. We then move into median construction, which will be, you know, constructing the medians based on the median engineering designs, and of course landscape installation based on the landscape design. A summary of expenses per mile. This is, you know, moving forward based on current pricing. As you can see here, it's roughly costing, or estimated to cost around $1.5 million per mile when you take into account the engineering design, the curbing, and the median construction, you know, along with the landscape construction itself or landscape installation. So what's factoring in, you know, what's factoring the expenses itself? A number of things are factors to these expenses, and what, you know, varies in expenses per mile. And we've talked about these sometimes in other meetings, but, you know, we have the project length itself. So, you know, it's all scale and volume. The larger the project, or the longer the project, you know, design cost tends to go a little bit lower. Varying cost of material like cement and even plant material, as we're all aware, depending on the supply and demand. It can fluctuate greatly during varying times of the year, or during varying times of you know, depending on hurricanes and other natural disasters that are hitting Florida itself. Intensity of the landscaping, you know, we look at this, you know, it tends to cost a significant amount more to construct a more intense landscaping versus a foundational landscape like we have in the top right. And also the varying ratio of landscape material. Landscape design is going to dictate the cost of the landscaping. So depending on the material you choose, you can have material that's a lot more expensive. You can pick material that looks great and it's more adaptive to our area, that's not as costly, and that can bring down that cost a bit when you're looking at the long-term installation costs per mile. And also we have to look at ongoing maintenance and the cost of the maintenance depending on the intensity level of the landscaping. So looking at the maintenance cost itself, right now with the 44 miles that are currently under contract, we're looking at about $1.6 million yearly. Every additional mile that we add is roughly costing between $35,000 to $40,000 per year to maintain. This is based off of the current landscape maintenance contracts and the level of service on these contracts. So with that being said, adding additionally, looking at the whole city as a whole, you're looking at about $5 to $6 million once the entire city is under a landscape maintenance contract for the enhanced medians. We also have refurbishment funds that are budgeted in on a yearly basis. Right now, we're currently at around $550,000 for the 44 miles. Looking at projected costs into the future, you're roughly looking at about $2 million with the current projections. And then I'll hand it off to Mark Mason.
So as the city manager, Mark Mason, Financial Service Director, good morning, Mayor and council members. As the city manager pointed out, if we elected to try to do this on an annual basis, it would take us approximately 50 years to do 100 miles worth of medians. And so we had discussed some options or some opportunities or alternatives in how to fund this. One of the things that we looked at, and it is not a new thing, it is something that has been discussed in the past, is to use an assessment format. And so I basically calculated you a potential. This should not be construed as an absolute. We haven't even looked at the assessment methodology. One of the things that as part of assessment methodology, it's the benefit that was received by a property owner from whatever it is that you're doing. And so, if you're looking at a median on a 4-lane roadway, the further away you get from the roadway, the lesser the benefit usually is achieved by a property that is not abutting the actual improvement, but it will be a little bit further away. And so this is a very basic calculation to kind of give you an idea of what the potential would be if we were to do an assessment just specifically south of Pine Island Road. And the reason why it's south of Pine Island Road is because north of Pine Island Road, we're going to be doing a lot of UEP work in the future. And as we do the UEP, we would actually look to do many of the medians improvements during the UEP process. It is not something we ever did when we did the water and sewer UEP south of Pine Island Road, but it is certainly something that can be evaluated doing it north of Pine Island Road. As a matter of fact, I think in North 1 West, we're looking at doing some of the curbing along the medians as we go in and rebuild the roads on the 4-lane roads. So in this particular case, we would be looking at the total miles of unimproved medians south of Pine Island Road, about 35 miles. Estimated cost based upon the $1.5 million just provided is about $52.5 million. We also have to look at contractor capacity. We actually talked a little bit about that yesterday when we were talking about the UEP and the ability and the availability of underground contractors. In this case, we would be looking at contractor capacity, and in talking with Omar, he believes that we would have about 4 miles of capacity within the system for contractors to come in here and do the work on an annual basis. So in looking at that, it would take us approximately 11 years, sorry, not 11 years, but at 4 miles a year over about 9 years, we'd be able to get all of these done. And, that would be about $6 million a year. On an assessment basis, if every parcel were to receive the same level of benefit, then it would be about $90. And again, this is an estimate only. We haven't done the analysis. We haven't done we haven't looked at or prepared the work on the methodology for the assessments. And again, in talking about north of Pine Island Road, we're talking about the UEP areas. We're talking about improvements that are available to do. And if we elected to do an assessment south of Pine Island Road, we would look at similar type of assessment methodology north of Pine Island Road as well. So for us, it's an option. All right? Do you want us to go forth and evaluate the assessment option, look at the benefit analysis, look at the potential of doing something like this, or we continue to do or look at potentially funding the improvements at 4 miles a year at about $6 million a year? which we would expect that over time that cost would simply just continue to go up on an annual basis. So that's where we're at. We have the options.
So I guess the direction you're looking for today is, do we explore this any further, or do we consider other methods of funding that we have available to us through our yearly budget process?
Correct.
Okay. All right, now I'll open it up for that. Go ahead, sir.
I like the idea. I think it makes sense if we can accomplish it much quicker. I'd be curious, though, as far as an approval mechanism, right? I mean, it appears that we could do it here at council level, but would it be appropriate, because we'd be impacting all parcels, some more affected than others, maybe do a referendum to get a real true picture of what the public believes we should do with regard to median beautification? I think it will make a dramatic difference in the city as it sits today. I mean, I think that's one of the big detractors, as far as I see it driving around, is the medians. They look dramatically different depending where you are. And I think that's been an issue for a really, really long time. I just wonder, I mean, it'd be a simple way to get a quick temperature of the community's belief in it. I mean, it's a relatively small dollar figure to most, I believe, but I think I'd be curious if that'd be something we could do either legally or even as a council, what we think moving forward. But I like that idea better, especially if we're looking at a quick decision. I mean, I think the quicker we can start, the better. And if we could even get it on the next ballot, which isn't that far off, we may have this program up and running very quickly. Thank you.
Councilmember Steinke.
Thank you. Just a clarification, Mark, if you could go back to 176, I think it is. If our contractor capacity is 4 miles a year and we have 99 miles of unimproved medians, that sounds more like 25 years to me.
I'm talking about south of Pine Island Road only, at the 35 miles.
The 35 miles?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be about 9 years.
There's no irrigation north of Pine Island, so
Right.
there wouldn't be water to irrigate.
And I think as it relates to Councilmember Carr's comment, I think if we want indication of whether it's something that the public wants, we could do that in a way other than referendum. We can certainly do that through survey rather than having to wait till November, because the referendum would deal with the funding mechanism. I think what we want, and I think what you were alluding to, is we want to know if that's what the public wants before we determine what a funding mechanism would be, to find out if that's something that interests the public. And from those areas of our city that currently have very pretty medians, I think there will be some pushback from those, in that they will probably feel that they paid more for their homes because of where the home was and because there were beautiful medians there. And so I don't know if there's the potential for segmentation of where this is done and how it is funded. But I think because of our city in total having been developed over the years and different areas developed to different degrees than other areas, a general consensus, it'll be interesting to see what that would look like.
Mr. Mayor?
Good.
Just to, and the part of my mindset is that this is an annual assessment for 9 years or 10 years, the way I'm seeing it. Am I correct, Mark?
For the construction part only, one of the things we would recommend afterwards is to continue the assessment on the maintenance side. So this would be not only a construction assessment, but it would be a continual maintenance assessment for basically ever, which is certainly allowable. Essentially, it's swapping one place for another. Either it's coming out of the general fund in order to maintain it, or it's coming out of the folks that are benefiting from it to maintain it.
And again, that's part of the reason I think the referendum is appropriate, only because of the long-term nature of the assessment needs. And it also ensures that future councils, they're bound by it. In other words, the referendum's already been had, the public has agreed to the funding source. So even if we all are gone, the funding will still continue in the same manner, and it couldn't be taken away. That was another part of it. I thought just because of the duration of the assessments for the 10 years, whether it be for construction and/or maintenance, that was another part. I was thinking it'd be better just to get that approved, not just the buy-in, so to speak, because I think that's difficult. I mean, we can take a temperature through survey and whatnot, but a referendum is a very definitive answer, and we could get, relatively short order if we can get it this year. Anyway, that was my mindset, was the duration of the costs associated with it.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, but it needs to be finely tuned. It's going to add tremendous value to the city of seeing all the medians done, but I think we can do it a lot cheaper. I would like to ask the city manager, did he get the numbers on the Sands project that was done?
Mr. City Manager.
I'm sorry?
Did you get the numbers of the Sands project that was done, the stretch that was done on Sands by the donated organization?
Yeah,
nonprofit?
we track all the medians. But the numbers that we have here are not for the Sands project
Yes, but-
finished. That's just sod and trees like every 50 feet. The numbers we have priced here are for the Rose Garden and Chiquita level of landscape.
Yes. So could we hear what them numbers were for Sands? For just what
Yeah, I
was
don't know.
accomplished
Omar, do you
by-
have it
by-
available? Or?
By trees and sod? And curbing. So curbing, trees, sod,
Yeah, I mean,
irrigation.
depending on the level of intensity, which is one of the things that Omar was describing, that you could deliver this a lot cheaper if you just want to go out with a basic level of improvement.
Yeah, so I don't have the numbers here with me for the Sands project, but it's like the city manager was referring, and that's what I was referring to in the presentation as well. It's been shown that the foundational landscaping, so the trees and the grass and the irrigation, will cost significantly less, not only for construction but for maintenance long term than what we're seeing in our current projects. The Adopt a Medium program has some cost variables. We have parts that are being done by the applicant, parts that are being done by the city, and that varies depending on project to project. I still think that looking at this in the long term, I think foundational landscaping like what we're seeing in Sands may be a great option long term moving forward in the larger scale.
So would you say that they accomplished that at least half the cost of $1 million?
I would say that it's actually from based on our analysis, comparing it to Rose Garden, I want to say it's a little bit cheaper, but not as long term. It's not going to be as it's not a significant cost savings. What I'm seeing on our end. You look at cost per linear foot for total construction compared to some of the other projects.
Okay. I see it differently. What I'm trying to accomplish is to get more done for the amount of money. And I think if we're doing volume now, that we're talking about accomplishing more, there are ways to purchase futures in the product that's needed at farms to pre-buy or commit. You save a tremendous amount of money that way. Also, the design cost that we saw of I think it was $70,000 a mile. If we bring in an in-house architect for that, that eliminates cost as well. And it also, the design on Sands, I'm very happy with that. It's not high density, but it did change that neighborhood dramatically in appearance. And I think that's what we're trying to do in the city. I would think that would be very acceptable, and that would probably more than double the miles that we can accomplish for the money that we're talking about. So I think I'm interested in moving forward, but I think we can sharpen our pencil a lot and come up with ideas to get costs down on product and on design. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I agree that this is definitely an option. I'd like to explore a little more exactly how it's going to work. I kind of see when you talk about an assessment, the construction aspect is much more costlier than the maintenance aspect. So in the discussion of the assessment, once it's been brought back to council, I'd like to see that breakdown. If the assessment is X for the first 10 years, what is going to be the maintenance component thereafter? I don't want to have that same exact assessment continue on based on construction.
You wouldn't.
So
it
I-
would go down after
Yeah.
it's.
So I would like to see what that is. There's probably a lot of work here that has to go into, first off, bringing it back probably at a committee of the whole, having a discussion, seeing what the plan is. I think today we're at the 30,000 feet level. So do I think it is an option that we should explore further? Absolutely. I can't tell you I'm 100% on board until I see the details. I think in the meantime, I can tell you, Councilmember Carr, we only have until April to put something on the primary election, and we only have until June to put something onto the general election. I don't know if that's enough time to vet this. It could be. But I do like the idea of the survey. We may do a survey and find out that the community isn't on board with this. So then why spend all the time, all the staff hours, and all the man hours to develop that? So I think the survey could be done quite quickly, a lot quicker than a referendum. And then if that survey comes back favorable, then we move forward and try to get a plan together and maybe try to get something, if it's a decision, to stick it on for a referendum. So I think it's important. Let's not put the cart before the horse. I think a survey will kind of give us a temperature with a more in-detailed discussion of how that assessment will work. And then if that's something we want to put to a referendum for the ultimate decision, I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Mayor. May I speak? I like the idea. I think that you can get down even deeper, where in the future, if we find, depending on the level of feedback or positive feedback in the surveys, directly impacted properties are going to love this, right? I mean, I live near the Pelican corridor and north of the Parkway, which does not have anything like the south side on Pelican, right? So obviously, I would be a big proponent of this personally, and I've thought about this for years, and I've had discussions as a private citizen and not as a council member about how that could be accomplished, and it can actually be done with even neighborhood surveys and neighborhood assessments based on what I understand. Obviously, the cost would go up because the number of people would be lower. And again, this probably goes before the Green Book change. The discussions I had were before the requirement of curbing, in the median, which I think it really significantly has increased the cost of beautification. But I think makes a lot of sense, but not necessarily just from a safety standpoint, but even aesthetically, it looks way different when you look at these medians. And for maintenance, they hold up longer, water's retained, people aren't driving over them, and other things. But anyway, I agree. 30,000 foot level, as you described, I'm on board with it. I just think if we get to the point where 60,000 lots, property owners are going to be assessed, not all directly affected by the beautification other than driving by it, I just thought it would be a good way to at least have a discussion about the potential for a referendum as we go forward.
Councilmember Cosner.
Thank you, Mayor. So I missed where you said this, but is the whole city going to be assessed under this plan or just south of Pine Island Road?
Now, as a matter of fact, you know, part of it would be you already have some improved medians, so that you wouldn't be including them. But we would include something in there just for the maintenance. I mean, if we're going to look at this, we look at holistically citywide, and then we bring it down, because we're not going to be doing an assessment north of Pine Island Road today due to the UEPs. We'd be just talking about south of Pine Island Road today.
And it's based on proximity, so like one person in one part of South Cape might be assessed a certain amount and might be different for someone else?
I would expect when we sit down with our assessment attorney and folks that do assessment methodologies, that we would see that the greatest benefit is the folks that live on the median, and then there's a diminishing benefit the further away you are from the median. And so we would go into the city and figure out exactly where folks are at and then make that determination. That's what I expect will happen.
Okay, that would make for an interesting public opinion process, because it would be hard for anyone to know definitely what their assessment would look like until we actually do those calculations. So just keep that in mind as we talk about a referendum or, you know, interest survey. Yeah, I'd be interested in evaluating this program, but I do have some concerns.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that we may want to consider, you know, because one of the components of moving forward with any beautification, if there's irrigation water available to that area. And we already have a geographic map of the UEPs throughout the city. And that may be an avenue to utilize that particular map for the assessments. And the reason that I say that is because even if you talk about assessments north of Pine Island Road, as of today, we all know there's only certain locations north of Pine Island Road that have irrigation water available. So I think it would be important when we're doing these assessments to take that in consideration. And an easy way to do that is use the geographic map of the UEP areas, because we know which areas have water and which do not. So when you look at, say, north of Pine Island, if you recall yesterday, but there were several UEP areas just north of Pine Island Road. So if we apply the assessments, if we decide to go in that direction, utilizing that map, we already know who has irrigation water available and who does not. And only the residents that are in that area would be assessed, whatever the assessment number is that we decide. And the residents that are living outside of that UEP area that do not have irrigation water available to them, then they wouldn't be assessed. So I think that may be something that we consider, you know, how this project actually mushrooms out.
Right.
And that way we just, you know, we don't do a blanket south of Pine Island Road and a blanket north of Pine Island Road. So that would be something, and you know, I think we're maybe getting too far into the weeds today, but that's maybe just a discussion that I'll probably bring up at a later time to make sure it's equally applied to the residents that have the availability of the irrigation water to them. Councilmember Steinke.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly being able to segment the assessment based on the neighborhoods affected would be similar to UEP. But in UEP, every single property, every single resident within that UEP gets equal benefit from the water and sewer and the irrigation, whereas it's just been stated that the further from the median you are, the less value you get in that. So I think we should be careful to compare it to that because of the diminished value to residents that are further away from that street that has the median. And so it's a kind of a slippery slope, and it's a tedious decision. It's not an easy decision to make when trying to represent all of the citizens around this project.
Councilmember Long?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I actually think, based on what I'm hearing, it might be an unpopular opinion, but we're getting way into the weeds on a lot of this. I mean, we talk about median beautification, and it's not something that I've been a particular proponent of over the last few years, but we're continuing to talk about increasing the dollar amounts that we spend on that. When we've got roads that we need to take care of, we've got resurfacing projects that we're putting on the back burner. I would much rather be having a discussion here about how we can put our money towards the foundation of our roads first before we talk about one or two medians that are going to be the recipient of a couple $1 million and only affect a specific neighborhood. To me, it's a classic example of the cart before the horse. I understand that we're talking about assessment in specific areas, and so that might alleviate some of the other parts that were talked about. But to me, if we're throwing millions and getting one or two or a couple miles of beautification and medians, when we could in reality get several miles of roads resurfaced that are in desperate need of it. I mean, just this morning you've got residents online complaining about potholes and blowing tires and bending rims, and a lot of that coincidentally is north of Pine Island, where again conveniently we're not talking about as part of this project here. So sure, we can say, oh yeah, we've got the UEP and we don't have irrigation. Well, then again, we're getting the short end of the stick in the north when we don't even have roads that in reality are surfaced smoothly and correctly, and now we're continuing to throw money south to put medians in particular areas when we should be throwing millions and millions in fixing the roads that we've got. So that's where I would prefer to spend the money. For that reason, I'm not interested in moving forward in this direction. Thank you.
Mayor?
Councilmember Shepherd, and then I'll go to you.
I agree, and that's why I think we should look at districts. Every district has things that are more important in another district. So my thoughts are, if we ask the citizens south of Pine Island Road to vote, that if they supported this program, I already think the answer would be no. What I think would be better would be to ask the citizens per district to vote on a project like this. And I believe that my district would vote yes for this program. And if another district, the citizens have something else that's more important, like Keith's district, where they're more concerned about roads, then they can press for their needs. And money should be put towards their needs. But I believe also that when it comes to the value, I don't believe it's how far away you live from a particular median. I believe that the beautification throughout the city adds value to everyone's real estate, not just if you live in front of the median or you're 2 blocks off of it. I believe it adds value to an entire neighborhood. I've witnessed it already. I mean, we've heard our mayor state, because he's in the business of building homes, that he does a lot better with houses built in certain locations, and it's where there's more beautification. So we have proof that it adds value to an entire area, not just the people that live in front of it. So I would be interested in somehow looking at these ideas and projects per district. Thank you.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. On Councilmember Long's note, I would love to see something like this, but for sidewalks. A sidewalk assessment would be great. I think that's more important to me personally than the beautification aspect. But talking about the North UEP, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that in the newer UEP areas, we are including beautification in the total assessment. Is that right?
No,
We are not.
not in the assessment itself. The assessment is only for water, sewer, and irrigation lines underground. As far as coming in, like as an example on Diplomat in North 1 West, we'll come in and do curbing as part of the rebuild of the road.
So that's some of the cost then, curbing,
Yes.
right? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Long?
Yeah, just to kind of touch on Councilmember Shepherd's point with districts, I don't know that that's equitable either, because you think about, well, we prioritize what we need. Well, frankly, what I was referring to is what we need, particularly in the north and other areas of the city, is a fundamental issue with the roadways, as opposed to what I'm equating to paint with the medians. Can you imagine asking residents of a particular district to be proponents of an assessment that would fix potholes in their area? It's absurd. And so to kind of even put that out there, to me, is not even a consideration. I just wanted to make that distinction very clear. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just one comment to follow up on that. I agree completely, Councilmember Long. I think that's why I think the discussion about how it's funded and who approves it is important, because it is additional above core service. I look at potholes fixing and roadway maintenance as a core service of the city that should be equally distributed based on need, right? 100% agree with that. That's why I wanted to have somewhat of a discussion about the funding of it, albeit in the weeds, but we're at a budget conference. I thought it'd be appropriate at least to have the topic brought up about how to fund it, and it wouldn't take away from the road maintenance that needs exist throughout the city. So that was my mindset, just so we're on the same page. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember, I didn't mean exactly how you put it out there. I just wanted to make the statement that every district has things that are more important than others. I in no way think that roads should be ignored. I get calls actually from citizens in the northern part of the city asking me for support and help with fixing their roads, and I just wanted to make that clear. I just wanted everyone to realize that every district has a different priority list. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayden.
Yeah, getting back on topic before we get too far away with it. I agree with it, exploring the assessment, and possibly doing the survey. And just a quick comment on any referendum that goes before the voter lives or dies based on the publicity that it receives ahead of time. And we certainly wouldn't have enough time to educate voters on what this referendum might mean unless we had put together a really, really good communications plan. Because the problem with referendums, especially in a presidential year, are the ballots are huge. These types of referendums get lost. It would be hard to explain much of this in 60 words. So the reason why the GO bond and the school district sales tax succeeded several years ago is because we had great informational campaigns set up, especially for the GO bond. So I think initially exploring the assessment and how it might work, how it might be structured, and possibly surveying certain areas for me is certainly the way to go. And I think a referendum is way down the road, and obviously there'll be further discussions on paving programs and resurfacing as we move forward. But staying on point, I have no problem with exploring this. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, let me try to bring back a little bit back to the 30,000 square foot level. I think what I was discussing yesterday about all the people coming to the north going to be asking for services that the people in the south already have. I think we had a little bit of that here this morning with Councilwoman Cozen and Councilmember Long. The idea of this concept for those that live in the South or represent, for you that represent people in the South, but for those that live in the South, the impact would be time. For those of you that live in the North or represent the North, by shifting the funding source from the property tax, which is where we're getting all the revenue from now, and moving it to an assessment, then frees up the person that lives off of Kismet or Del Prado or in Gator Circle from paying property taxes to fund Cape Coral Parkway or Chiquita's median improvement. So by moving the funding source to a dedicated assessment, you are now having the people that are benefiting, which is kind of the benefit discussion, paying for the level of service and that need and that improvement. And you're freeing up the revenue from those who are not anywhere even near that, may never even see Rose Garden, to then add more, to do more roads, more paving, more sidewalks. So that's kind of the high level concept here. I apologize for not explaining that, but right now we're funding this through property taxes, and so people that live in the extreme reaches of the city, that don't live in the south, that don't even have irrigation, their property taxes are going towards beautifying roadways, in the far south. So by doing this, one, for the people that live in the south, it provides a mechanism to speed it up, and so everybody that drives on the roadways have safe curbed roadways and beautified roadways. And then it frees up revenue in other parts of the city that need other needs to do that. Thank you.
Councilmember Long.
Yeah, I think we got to be real careful when we start separating where money goes into what parts of the city, because then you're going to get almost every situation where that's going to be the case, that someone is benefiting in one area and another is not. So the mayor, I think, mentioned yesterday with regards to the impact fees for the UEP, I believe, as far as the people in the south that have it are, in theory, paying more for a new lot and construction in the south to reimburse in the north. That's the idea, is the general fund is the general fund, and we're all in this together. It's one unified city, because if we start fragmenting where this money goes to this portion, this money goes to that portion, now you're feeding into the, I don't have kids, why am I paying the school tax? I mean, it could never end. And so we've got to be careful about how far we go when we say this money goes here, this money goes there, because then everybody's going to want to start splitting the pie, and it's going to become an impossible task for staff of the city, the finance department, and everything else. If we're sending this money here, this money there, this is going to this corner. I just want to be careful that we don't set precedent when we're doing that, and it becomes a dangerous one. So, thank you.
Any other discussion on this topic? Get the direction you're looking for, Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are interested in exploring this further. We're not going to go all in. We hear there's several bits of information and concern, so we'll take it to the next incremental level and go from there.
Just clarify, I'm not sure how you're counting me, but I was in support of having something come back.
Yeah.
Do you have me in the affirmative on that?
I had Shepherd as interested. I had Gunther as Explorer, Steinke as the survey, Cosden as interested, Hayden as Explorer. I had Carr's referendum. So yeah, 6.
Okay.
6.
I'm not just referendum. I certainly want to explore it regardless of the funding source.
Yeah, I had you at /survey. You came back around and said survey too. So.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next topic of discussion. 5C is Pine Island Road Corridor Vision Plan.
Actually, there's a second part of the beautification.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. It was buried up underneath it. It's all part of the beautification, and that's the
Okay.
next one I'm going to go to. And it's basically the same type of discussion, but now we're talking about lighting. Lighting within the city is, certainly helps with beautification of the city, and it is, I think it's part and parcel of, providing that particular resource, to the communities that we have here. Now, what we've done over the last, since the city was actually formed, is, as building occurs in a particular area and build out occurs, there's usually requests that come to the city. City fulfills the request by contacting LCEC. LCEC comes out and either puts in a pole or goes out and attaches a light to a pole, and then you have light. So over the last 15 years at least, there's been some discussion about lighting and how to end up paying for lighting and to be able to meet the goals of putting in lights where people want them in a timely manner and being able to pay for it. And so over the last, again, 40 years, 50, 60 years of how long the city's been here, lighting is paid for through the general fund The installation of the poles, the rental of the poles, and the lighting cost of the poles is paid through the general fund. The overall, in the 2024 budget, there's about $116,000 that's in there for new light poles. And this is basically based upon an estimate of where we think or where permits have been pulled, and we get an idea of the number of poles or number of lights that will actually be requested. And then we pay right now about $3 million a year for the actual lighting and the rentals of the poles. So you get an idea of exactly our cost per pole, and then the electric cost, which is about $12 a month per pole, $144. And we rent the pole, and the cost of the pole is about $9,200. So when you take $9,200 into $116,000, I think that's, I forgot what that number was. I wrote that down. I think we're putting in a little over 125 poles a year. So when we looked at this, we said to ourselves, it's basically the same thing. It's, I have this much that we've been paying every single year for lighting and for poles. And there have been times where poles have been requested, but the funding hasn't been available, so we haven't actually installed the poles. Overall, we would look, and so we're back to the same discussion of creating a lighting district or creating multiple lighting districts throughout the city. In some cases where the poles are being put in, the cost of the pole as well as would be part of that particular district. In the areas where lighting already exists, then it would be, again, you'd just be simply dealing with the maintenance or the replacement of poles, et cetera, over time. And so we looked at potentially looking at just simply a citywide one, because right now it's already being paid for from the general fund, so we would just be shifting the cost from one place, one funding source to another funding source. And in looking at all of the parcels within the city. And in this circumstance, you would carve out the major thoroughfares such as Cape Coral Parkway, you would carve out the Pineland Road and some of the other major thoroughfares, because those are in the 4-lane roads. Again, you get to the greatest benefit is on the 4-lane road, and then you have a diminishing benefit of that lighting structure along the 4-lane road the further away you get from the road. So we'd actually carve out the major thoroughfares, and the city would continue to pay for those because it's more of a safety issue along those major thoroughfares, with the medians, et cetera, that would be put in place. And so right now, based upon the $128,500, and again, this is a basic calculation. It's not meant to be the be-all and end-all. We haven't looked at the methodology. About $24 a year for the cost of lighting per parcel. And so for us, it's again, it's moving the funding source from one place to another. It's a benefit. Lighting is a benefit for everybody, but it's also part and parcel of the beautification of the city. In many cases, the more lighting you have, the safer the community, et cetera. But it's also a benefit from what you see when you're driving down the road at times in beautification. So the options again, continue to do what we're doing. Whoop, sorry about that. Or explore the opportunity or the option of putting together an assessment either on a citywide basis or on a district-by-district basis. And when I say district, I'm not talking about the council districts. I'm talking about looking at the natural districts associated with the way the city actually is built. In other words, you'd be looking at potentially Santa Barbara over from Veterans South as a district. That's just an example. It's not meant to be that is the district. Or, when you're looking into the north, you look at potentially Andalusia, west or east as a district. Again, that's just an example. It's not meant to be the actual district. So, again, we would recommend that we look at this as an alternative. It is something that we've talked about numerous times over the years, and again, it does free up certain resources that can be used for something else over time. In this case, it's about $3.3 million a year to go towards something else. Because it's really lighting being a benefit, there's a benefit to the lighting. So.
Okay, I'll open that up for discussion. I guess I'll start, for me personally, when you talk about savings where we can transfer funds that we may be utilizing currently out of general fund over if we have an assessment that's implemented, I think we have to be extremely defined on what we're going to do with that money that we're saving. So for an example, you said $3.3 million just in the lighting that we put on a yearly basis would be able to utilize for something else. I think it's important to identify what we're going to do with that for the voter.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that's number one. Number two, I see there's three things when Councilmember Carr mentioned core service that we're responsible for. Health, welfare, and safety. Or for me, that's core services that we are responsible for. And those core services for safety, in my opinion, is lighting. And lighting on the major thoroughfares and major corridors, I think, is our responsibility. So to clarify, Mr. Mason, this program, is it for residential streets that are outside of the major thoroughfares, corridors? Correct. So, I know we have a program in place now where a resident, if they want a street light out in front of their house, they can participate in a program and get that. I think I would have difficulty myself moving forward with an assessment for lighting. One thing that I don't want to do is get into practice for our community, just keep providing assessment over assessment over assessment, to free up some funding to put somewhere else, especially if it's a service that I personally believe is a core service and a responsibility of the city. Median beautification, I'm 100% on board. I've always advocated for that. I agree with Councilmember Shepherd. I think it will increase the value of that neighborhood. If you do that, it will increase the value of our city. But to me, that's not a health, welfare, or safety issue. As much as I support it, to me, that's a want, not a need. And if our community wants to look better and our community wants to invest in our medians, that I know many of us on this council have advocated for over the years, I would be grateful because I think it would be a big improvement for our city. But it doesn't affect the health, welfare, or safety of our city. So for lighting, for me, that would probably be a hard pill for me to swallow when it comes to an assessment. So with that, I'll open it up for any other. Councilmember Cosden, I think you nodded your head first, and then I'll go to Councilmember Steinke.
Thank you. I agree with what the mayor said. I couldn't get behind this program. I think we have a deficiency in lights in Cape Coral, especially in the north, but I think we need to allocate more money in our budget as opposed to adding a new assessment. This assessment, if we then take the $3.3 million and spend it elsewhere, is really just a tax increase because we're still spending that money somewhere else, so the tax bill ends up being higher. And if we're going to do a tax increase, I'd rather just allocate it in our budget than do it this way. Thank you.
Councilmember Steinke.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree as well that over the years, the lighting that we do have has been funded by all through general fund, and so if the potential argument is that by doing it by assessment, and those people that are now getting the lighting will be the ones paying. There's a time when the people that didn't have the benefit of the lighting paid for those that got the lighting. And now there's a time where the people that have the lighting can pay for those that don't have the lighting, and it kind of what goes around comes around. And so, I would not be in favor of a separate assessment to provide lighting that I agree is all part of health, welfare, and safety.
I agree, not to repeat what's already been said. I think those two individuals that spoke prior to me kind of spoke to that. But I do want to say, to pile on to the mayor's point, I think a lot of what we've done here throughout these last 2 days has been increases in assessments and impact fees and utility fees. I don't think any of this has really been about how can we get more out of what we've got or increase that. So, you know, sure, they're on one side, we're coming into an election year, so what are we going to do? We need more money, so we're going to continue to add this fee, that fee, but then say we didn't raise taxes because we didn't touch the millage. I think to Councilmember Cosden's point, if we need the money, then let's just get the money the right way and talk about potentially doing it that manner than just to say, hey, let's just add this fee, or let's add that assessment, or let's increase the impact, or let's slap this as an assessment for the UEP. All those are just alternate mechanisms to get more funding when we could, in reality, if that's the direction that they wanted to go, do it with one swoop of just increasing the taxes, which isn't something I'm saying I'm supporting, but I'm just basically putting on the table here that all we've seen for the most part so far is additional assessments, impacts, and other ways instead of other ways to increase revenue through just the general fund.
Yeah, I agree with what was said by the rest of the council members, so I won't repeat. But I would be interested in maybe increasing the amount of money in the budget, general budget for lighting. But I also would want to make sure that because the entire city is paying towards this, that we somehow evenly disperse the amount of lights that we can a year, so it is fairly dispersed throughout the city.
Councilmember Hayden.
Yeah, I agree. You know, a long time ago, when the city was first incorporated, they did have a lighting district in the city because they didn't have the money to pay for the lights then in the budget because it was just a new city and they needed a way to pay for lights, especially in the downtown area. But assessment now doesn't work for me. Thanks.
Councilmember Carter.
Yeah, I don't like the assessment idea either. I think this is a core service, as you described. I can go back when I built the home that I'm in now. There was very few houses on the street when I called about the light. I don't know what the methodology is now, but it was based on proximity to another light. So you don't get a light on every pole, I think, unless you want to pay for it. I didn't pay anything extra for it. It was with my taxes, I guess. I never got a bill. But there were no other lights on my street, effectively. So I think as we grow out and build out north, I'm assuming, I'd like to know, I don't need anything, a presentation, but if something in writing about what is our methodology today about the light distribution, and how do you get a light if you go into a street without a light and so forth, and how it's prioritized. I think it makes sense where the people are is where we put the lights. We don't need lights on vacant streets, right? And I think we still have a few of those up north based on my drive arounds, but I think they should go where the needs are first and then and be funded through the general fund as it is today.
Okay. Get the direction you're looking, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, we're not going to advance this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that all on this particular topic, Mr. City Manager?
That's all, yes.
Okay. It's about 10:22. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? We'll come back about 10:35. Meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is 5C, which is the Pine Island Road Corridor Vision Plan. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Laura Dodd, our transportation planner, is going to give this presentation.
Laura Dodd, Public Works Principal Transportation Planner. So what you have before you is the summarization of some of our efforts within the last year to kick off the Pine Island Road Corridor Vision and Action Plan. This plan was a collaborative effort that started in the fall of 2022 with FDOT and the city as partners, and it was recently approved as a vision plan by council on October 18th of 2023. Because this is a presentation that you've seen before, I am going to skip over and just touch on some of the high points. Please feel free to stop me if there's something that's of interest you'd like me to go back over. But in essence, the corridor vision plan looked at approximately a 9-mile segment from Burnt Store Road to US 41 of Pine Island, State Road 78. It identified major attractors and chip generators along the corridor as attributes, and then it looked at some of the existing conditions, which would include speed limits, whether there were off-street facilities available, intersection control devices, and street lighting. Two of the most important facets of this study and the existing conditions analysis relied heavily on how is this road acting in a level of service standard. So this graphic really depicts a planning level evaluation based on the level of service where State Road 78 was acting. And that is cause for concern because, as you can see, this road in its current condition is failing or near failing level of service standards within certain segments. And this is also a developing corridor. I know that this is quickly becoming the heart of the city, and new residential is developing and commercial. But more importantly, this is one of our most crucial evacuation routes, not only for our communities, but adjacent communities as well. So when we see numbers like this, it becomes immediately concerning that something needs to happen. And the city has started those steps through this vision plan. The next item is also telling because when it comes to the level of service failures, you generally see an uptick similarly in incidents associated with the safety standards on those roadways. You can see in this graphic that that is strongly corresponding. So this really triggered the collaboration between FDOT and the city to start looking for feasible solutions to reinvent this roadway in a safer and in more compatible way with the city's growth and to relieve the congestion. So we did host several public workshops throughout to provide citizen inputs to get to the final conclusion, and that led to an overall corridor vision. Those key takeaways were primarily safety along the corridor for our current entitlements and the future residents to come, to reduce the congestion, improve multimodal characteristics, transit access, and to enrich the corridor character. So that provided for a menu of strategies. I'm just going to touch on a couple of these. And for the safety, we started to focus primarily on speed management and the reduction of crashes and recessed crossings. Congestion, the primary conclusion that we came to when we started looking at relieving congestion on this roadway was adding a travel lane. By and large, that was hands down one of the strongest supporting characteristics. Multimodal off-street facilities were a strong component to start assessing not only the congestion, but the safety issues in this project. Transit, expanding the transit and equity for users, and the character, which I will get into later. So enhancing safety had several very specific recommendations that came with it. Some of those were setting target speeds, reducing lane widths, increasing signal density, and some landscaping elements. In identifying those high crash locations where pedestrians were at risk to start targeting those specifically for some of those improvements and countermeasures. Here is a menu of items that were compiled as part of your list of potential improvements and recommendations as we start moving forward. These are not set to any one specific location yet. However, as we move forward to the PD&E, we'll see more evolution into these menu of strategies. These, just in short, some of these include reduced radii, street lighting, and protected intersections. Reducing congestion. This has been, from my understanding, a repeat complaint and a high demand from residents that we start looking at the reduction in congestion, not only for our local residents, but again, to echo, this is an evacuation route. This is a critical corridor and becoming a key gateway to our city. So by providing those additional travel lanes, we are accommodating additional users as our city continues to grow. Improving multimodal connectivity, this was a great way to segue into more current planning standards where we examining the safety of the most vulnerable users, whether that be through buffered bike lanes, multi-use paths, additional sidewalks, and connection between non-motorized facilities to really create that holistic network that looks beyond just the streetscape. Improve transit access. There are recommendations to improve transit stops along the corridor. And enrich corridor character, which, there it goes. For the sake of this budget retreat, this is an interesting item to bring up because as we move forward to the PD&E, a lot of these items will need to be addressed as a need for the city. So for example, the landscaping component, landscaping plans would need to be drafted to facilitate the PD&E as it goes along, and also creating gateways and wayfinding signage. To focus back on the landscaping, there is a strong opportunity for the city to be able to leverage landscaping plans to get additional grant monies to fund some of that that landscaping characteristic for the city. In addition, the wayfinding and branding of it can help really bring together the corridor holistically and give it a sense of place. So the next steps moving forward, right now we have completed the visioning plan and the PD&E is targeted to begin in FY25. And you will see currently the PD&E approval, the local funding agreement with FDOT is tentatively scheduled to go before you all at a regular council session, January 24th. So that is a brief update on where we are at with this project, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the update. Any questions by council or comments? Councilmember Steinke.
Thank you. And first, give credit where credit is due. The FDOT opportunity to participate and have this presentation and then the summary, the survey that followed that as a part of it, I thought was outstanding. I participated in that and have been interested in, okay, where do we go next? We had some great ideas shared, and so how do we implement those? So I'm glad to see that it's moving along. Just one comment in addition. I know one of the, certainly on the Pine Island corridor, we have, if you will, a commercial entity after commercial entity after commercial entity, parking lot after parking lot after parking lot. One of the recommendations was to have non-motorized connectivity, but the way it was displayed was to have that out in between the street and the commercial establishments. I would like to suggest, included in the conversation, that non-motorized connectivity would actually happen parking lot to parking lot, where the individual would not have to walk all the way out to the street, down a sidewalk that is very close to the street, and then make their way back to where the actual establishments are in the next. Instead, with the setbacks that are required between the two facilities, simply make use of that area, that's created by the setbacks to allow people to walk directly from one, if you will, parking lot to the next parking lot without having to go to the street. Just a suggestion to be included once we go from PD&E to design.
if I'm understanding you correctly, I believe you're referencing some cross-access easements that are primarily focused upon pedestrian activity on the private parcels. That's something that I can discuss with the Development Services Department and get back to you on.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I know we've seen this update many times, probably more for the public view here today, but any other comments or questions? Thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item 5D, the Bridge Rehabilitation Master Plan and Weir update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to have Interim Capital Improvement Director Dave Heide give this presentation.
Mayor, Council, my name is Dave Heide. I'm the Interim Capital Improvement
Make sure you speak
Director.
into the mic, sir, please.
There we go. Again, Dave Heide, Interim Capital Improvement Director. Let me see where we're at here. So the bridge improvement project, or the bridge study, we had a master plan consultant look at all of the bridges in the city and go through and evaluate all of the crossings, all the bridges. We had, we have 141 bridges with 123 different locations. We did the bridge inventory and they evaluated the various different types, whether they were actually bridges or culverts or just, large culverts, box culverts, small piping crossings. And this map identifies all the various different locations of the bridges. We have some that are on salt water, some that are on fresh water, and that, saltwater bridges tend to
Bless you.
probably need a little more maintenance and attention than the freshwater. It's just a couple of pictures of the various types where we have an actual bridge in the top left corner, and then we have a culvert in the top right corner, and we have box culverts and smaller culverts on the lower left corner there. The bridges, are owned and maintained by Public Works, maintained by the Public Works Department. We do inspections every 2 years just to make sure that, we don't have any major issues going on with those. FDOT also inspects some of the bridges, the larger ones. I apologize if I hesitate a little bit. I hadn't originally planned to give this particular presentation, so I'm catching up a little bit. So we had Vokert was the company that did the evaluation of the bridges. So we have certain bridges that we've already done some maintenance on. So DOT had also, like I said, DOT did some inspections of some of the bridges, and they had identified 2 bridges that they were going to rehabilitate and replace. And I think, due to funding, like we all have issues with funding, apparently they redid their methodology for identifying which bridges are going to be replaced. and the two bridges that they were going to work on in the city have now fallen off of their list. As it turns out, those bridges, they weren't in a condition where they were going to fall apart or be dangerous. They just happened to fall on their list of bridges that could be replaced. So there are a couple of bridges that we are going to have some funding from FWHA, where they're going to pay for 80% and we're going to have to pay for 20% of it. There's some costs up there for the design. The start date for construction is to be determined. It's about $500,000 for the one bridge, and the other bridge is, again, about $500,000. So the bridges typically, because they're mostly concrete structures, have a longer, lifespan, up to 75 years. A lot of them have been in place for 50 years. Let's see. So part of the study evaluated some improvements that could be done to the bridges to extend their lifespan up to 5 years or more. Eventually, though, the bridges are going to have to be replaced. So we kind of broke, the study that Volker did broke the needed repairs down to different priorities. Priority one was emergency maintenance issues that needed to be taken care of sooner. Then we had urgent maintenance that could be done within the next 2 or 3 years, routine maintenance, and then just superficial maintenance. We currently have $2 million in the bridge rehab fund. And like previous slide said, there's a 20% match required for the FWHA hurricane bridge repairs. So that amounts to about $251,000. So because of the high volume of bridges that we have, we went through and looked at different options to fund the replacement of bridges. Option one was to start with, let me see. Oh, and this is for the initial repairs. We have approximately $2.7 million, and we're working on a plan to do those initial maintenance over the next 5 years. So in order to, because of based on the time frame when the bridges were built, this is a little chart that shows replacement of some of the bridges and when they would need to be replaced. In 2040, there's a large number of bridges that are going to come due that would need to be replaced. And then in 2045, there's another large group that would need to be replaced. And this just shows the average cost identified by the consultant. And this is kind of the range of the cost for the various bridges. So when you look at all of the different bridges and when they would need to be replaced, we looked at different options for funding the replacement. This option looks at setting aside $1 million per year to fund the rehabilitation. You can see that as you add the $1 million a year, the fund builds up, and as the replacement happened, the fund would be depleted. And what this shows is at $1 million a year, by the time we got to year 2040, we'd have to provide some kind of alternate funding of about $28 million to replace the bridges up to that point. If you continue that down at least to 2045, we'd have to fund an additional $35 million. So that brings us up to almost $74 million that we'd have to find funding source for. The other option we looked at, if you put $2 million a year towards the bridges, in 2030, we'd have enough to take care of any replacements up to that point. And 2040 is about where we'd get to the point where we didn't have enough money to cover all the cost and would have to do some alternate funding of about $11 million. When you get down to 2045, that alternate funding goes up to 35 for a total of $51 million. Now, this doesn't cover all the bridges, so this would continue on, but we figured 2045 was far enough to go out. So the last alternative was to fund $4.4 million a year, which would take care of all the replacement and rehabilitation out through 2045 with no alternate funding. So I think that's what we're kind of looking for now is your take on how you would like to move forward funding bridge replacement, whether you want to, look at doing $1 million a year and have to do some alternate funding in 2040, or less alternate funding, or if you want to put $4.4 million a year that would save from having to do any alternate funding. We currently have about $2 million in the budget. Any questions? I'll try to answer them.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, I think it would be prudent to maybe discuss what we've been doing the last few years, and as far as the funding that we've been putting towards our budget on a yearly basis. And also, I think something that comes to mind on this particular topic, and I remember a few years ago we were there was a discussion, I believe, with staff on taking a look at exactly what bridges that we need, and if any of the bridges, once they become to a point where they need to be replaced, maybe we could go an alternative direction, maybe not to replace that particular bridge. So I'd like to hear a little bit on that discussion, or is that something that we've looked at in detail?
Yeah, so I'm going to have the Financial Services Director talk about what money we have set aside, where it's at, what it can be used for. That discussion that you just referenced regarding alternatives for replacement or rehabilitation, is the successor to this. So the first thing was to go out there, identify them all, find out if any of them need to be replaced immediately, if any of them had any immediate concerns. And as you could see from the presentation, we didn't have any bridges fall in those like tier 1 or tier 2 priorities. So we do still have some time for the bridges. The next set of analysis, we'll be looking at it from a public safety perspective and a traffic related perspective to see if there are alternative routes, if we can actually remove some bridges from the system in order to further decrease the funding that we would need as these years get closer and closer. So the short answer on the second part is we haven't actually started that process yet. We wanted to make sure everything was good and we didn't have any immediate concerns, and then lay out a funding plan for those. And then if we are able to remove some from the system, then we can start pulling back the funding for those bridges.
Okay, let's see, we carried a $1 million reserve in the general fund for about 15 years for bridges. And in 2021, we recommended the council we move it out, put it into a capital project, and then fund the bridges at about $1 million a year. We skipped the funding in 2023 and added it in 2024, so now we have $2 million that have been set aside, and we can, this recommendation in here, as far as the budget is concerned, and I'm not sure, what option did you recommend? Option 2?
Well, we were looking at the three options. It seems like option 2 was $2 million a year, and that reduced the amount of alternate funding that was required in the later years.
Which would have been primarily a financing option. So
Yeah.
At this point, we would have brought forward again in 2025, and what we have in our current budget is to set aside $1 million a year for bridges, which is option 1. I'm sorry.
And that would be a reoccurring expense?
It would be a reoccurring set aside. It would not necessarily be spent every single year.
Right.
It's creating a sinking fund for future replacements as well as future repairs.
And if we're able to remove some bridges from the system, then while that gives you the possible debt exposure, that would go down.
Yeah, I did the math real quick. I mean, if you most of our bridges are 50 years old today, and even if we can get a life expectancy of 75 years, that only allows 25 more years. So if you take the $74 million, you divide it by the 25 years, that's $2.9 million a year that we're going to have to put each and every year in order to get to that number. So to come up with a program that we are yearly, each budget cycle, are contributing dollars for this, I think is, to me, the best avenue. Even at the $1 million option, I think we're going to be short here in the next 25 years.
Oh, yeah.
So that may be something that, that we take a look at. Just on the basic math, we're at 2.9 million, so we're almost only talking about doing a third of the need, utilizing the $1 million. So I'm definitely for coming up with a line item in the budget each and every year for bridge replacement. I think it's imperative that we plan for the future. Unfortunately, I think we probably should have done this years ago. But, we can't look backwards. We can only look forward. So I would definitely support that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilmember Steinke.
Thank you. First, I was disappointed to hear that we lost the FDOT funding for the 2 bridges that we got. That was a very small allotment for us in Cape Coral that came out of that. So that was surprising to hear. This analysis that I'm looking at, I've seen many times before on commercial building maintenance evaluations to determine how to budget. There's 2 factors I don't see, and Mark, you probably know this off the cuff, and if you don't, I'm sure you can get it to me real quick. What inflation factor have we applied to those future replacement costs, and what asset value, what appreciation value have we given to the fund balance over time that would allow that fund to grow based on where those dollars sat before they were needed?
These numbers are all based on current. Go ahead, Mark.
So there's no escalation in cost of value for any of the replacement costs that are built in here?
Right.
That right now is the answer, is that apparently, and I haven't read the entire report yet, but if there's no escalation in here, we would have to go back in and escalate based upon the past ENR cost construction index to figure out what those numbers would be. Now, as far as earnings are concerned, we have not gone back and made a determination on the future value of the fund at this time when this was put together.
Okay, something that would be important to me as it would relate to that would be obviously to use a future value on the expense that is established as an assumption in the calculation, and then taking those dollars that are placed in year in and year out, what do those grow to in the future, and then we use a present value calculation of the rest. So I think we need a little more detail in how this is created to determine what that annual budget would be. Might be less if we consider the growth of the dollars as they sit in the fund. Might be more when we consider the compound, inflationary pressures that will be on the expense of doing the repairs or the replacements. And all that being said, I would certainly be in favor of looking at some of those bridges that we could eliminate. We certainly have a challenge, unlike any other city, with over 400 miles of canals. You got to get over them somehow, some way. But there's some places where you don't necessarily have to get over them. You simply could establish a non-bridge way to get into some of the smaller communities, which we would then have to engage public safety to make sure that they can get where they need to go and get out without the use of that particular bridge. Just eliminate the bridge and use the bridges, say north and south of the one that was eliminated, but certainly public safety would have to get involved at whether their response times would be negatively impacted if we were to do that. So that'd be a way, I think, to save money from this, is determine which ones we could eliminate, and then apply those factors to make sure we're working with real dollars as we make our decision. Thank you.
Good, Councilmember Carter.
Just a quick question and clarification. You had mentioned with the FDOT bridges that were not being done based on whatever analysis they did, they're still responsible for the replacement of those, correct? At some point?
No. All the bridges are the city bridges. DOT had identified, they check several of the bridges that have longer spans, and they were going to replace a couple of them. But I think, like I said, because of funding issues, they had changed the criteria that they used to identify bridges that they were going to replace. And the ones that they were going to replace are not in danger of collapsing or being an issue. It's just that at one point they had funding and they had identified bridges in the South District that they could replace. And when they changed their criteria and their funding, the two bridges that they had identified dropped off the list.
They fell off their list, but they're still responsible for them?
No.
We are?
No, we are, yeah.
So I guess the question would be, how did they identify? Why did they pick two of our bridges in their budget?
The two bridges are what they're called functionally obsolete. So
Okay.
it's a design that no longer, they're basically the two bridges we have. These are the weight restricted bridges we have on Diplomat. And the ones Gary got a grant for?
Yeah, I think that was it.
So they were what they considered functionally obsolete. They are posted with weight restrictions, and the goal was to basically bring them up so that full commerce big trucks going up and down Diplomat would be able to traverse them without having to take an alternate route.
So it was grant funded, not necessarily there. I would assume there are bridges in this city that aren't ours, correct? I mean,
Well, this evaluation just looked at our
It
bridges.
was appropriations.
Okay.
Yeah.
A certain amount of money came to the county, and it was decided based on request, where are these dollars going to be used?
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for that.
What happens is the state, based on funds the bridge inspections for bridges that meet state criteria for a definition of a bridge under the state definition. So they will come in, fund the inspection, get this inspection report. That covers roughly half. I think you had it in the beginning, right? The state bridges that, no, you had Fresh and Salt. But the state will fund and inspect, let's say, roughly half of the bridges that we have. And then on the alternate year of that every 2-year cycle, the city funds and inspects the other bridges, which just basically are just a shorter, narrower span. So let's say the state's definition is a 40-foot length across the body or across any other, freeway, highway, whatever. Anything less than that, they don't inspect. And so what we do is they do one in 1 year, we do our set the next year. So we have a full evaluation of all the bridges every 2 years.
Just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, I apologize if these are elementary questions, but for instance, if it's a state road and it has a bridge, we're responsible for that bridge?
The only state road in the city is Pine Island Road, and there's no bridges.
Okay. County roads, same question.
County is responsible for theirs.
Yeah, that would be Del Prado.
Del Prado.
Right, and there are bridges on Del Prado.
Those would be counties.
Those are county.
Okay,
yeah.
that was my question. In other words, I'm just thinking, again, elementary probably in thinking, but if the roadway is not our roadway, we're not responsible for the bridge. Okay, thank you.
That is correct.
Okay, so not all bridges in the city are our responsibility.
Not all bridges
Within
in the
our
city.
jurisdiction.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Welsh.
Thank you. Seeing how we had $1 million a year for sidewalks and we fell way behind, looking at the different options proposed, knowing we need to start planning for this in the budget, I think I would personally be okay with going to option 2, not quite going all the way to option 3, which is fully funding the bridge replacement, and then maybe taking a look at this every 2 or 3 years to see how the fund is doing and the bridges. Does that make sense? So I would be comfortable starting now, budgeting option 2, but then knowing maybe in 2030, when that first replacement cost hits, seeing how it's doing and what the inflation and stuff like that is for the projected of 2045. Thank you.
So I guess the direction, Mr. City Manager, you're looking from us for today is option 1 or option 2. We're doing it.
Yeah, it could be do nothing, right?
Right.
It could be further the analysis, see what we can remove, or find the numbers. The idea is we've completed the analysis and put together the master plan on these assets, and have some funding requirements that we're going to need to start looking at. And as part of our preliminary budget discussions, it's do we want to prioritize this, or do we want to consider another delay?
Okay, so maybe we just kind of go around the table. I think we have 3 options: do nothing, option 1, option 2, or I guess something in between. But I think to start with, I kind of see 3 options for us. It sounds like staff is recommending option 1. Is that correct, Mr. City Manager?
That was the recommendation,
Okay.
because we still have a little bit of work to do, and we know that there are going to be other budget constraints as we move through the budget process.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with Councilmember Cosden and just kind of go around the table.
I agree with staff's recommendation.
Councilmember Steinke.
I agree with staff's recommendation, with the caveat that I would like to see a little more detailed analysis for accuracy.
Good, Councilmember Welsh.
I'm sticking with option 2 for the sake that it seems like every time we backpedal and don't prepare, that winds up biting us in the end. So I'd rather be ahead of the game.
Yeah, I agree with the tone we set yesterday with regards to forward thinking. I think option 2 is a more viable option. Not an incredible amount more than what we've got in option 1, but in the end, it shaves by these numbers over $20 million to the debt total. So a step in the right direction, not a big one, but I think it's worthwhile for the difference in the allocation. So 2.
Yeah, when I look at this, I think that honestly, unfortunately, I think we're kind of behind the eight ball here. And looking at the numbers and doing the math, like I said, we're almost 3 million per year. So even I think option 2, the $2 million a year should be our goal. And even by setting that as our goal, just by looking at the numbers, we're still going to be behind. So to be forward thinking, planning for the future, I would go with option 2.
I'm more concerned about the needs of today. We have some roads that are really bad and dilapidated, and I would be more willing to give the $2 million to them because that's a need of today. I am also concerned of the bridges, but that's how I see it. Thank you.
Which option? I'm sorry.
I wasn't fully.
Option 0.
Yeah.
Option 0? Okay. All right. Councilmember Hayden?
Option 2.
We have $2 million today, correct? Is that what I heard?
Correct.
And that would be in the fund that we're talking about continuing to increase, or is that just a maintenance budget?
As I understood this presentation, they would actually, it is a maintenance budget. They would actually utilize those funds based upon the maintenance needs as of today.
Okay. I think this is one of those ones that's easy to kick down the road, but I don't agree that we should do that. So I am in agreement with the option 2 to negate the need for a huge debt and service later on.
And Mr. Mason, I just want to be clear, this would be this monies would go into a restricted fund?
They sit currently in a capital project fund, which is restricted for the purpose to which it was created. And so, yes, it would, effectively, it goes into a reserve fund, unless the city council on a majority basis wants to pull it out of there and do something else.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if we're allocating the money for the bridges, that's exactly where the dollars are going, and planning for the future.
That is exactly where they'll go.
Okay.
Sorry for interrupting, but that's where they'll be.
Thank you. Okay. You get the direction you're looking for, Mr. City Manager?
I had 5 for option 2, 1 for option 0, and 2 for option 1. We do.
Okay. Let's move on. Any other discussion on that particular topic?
We do not.
Thank you.
To follow up, when we start looking at the bridges to be removed and the additional information, would you like that to go back to the CTAC or to a full count?
For me personally, I think it's a council decision. I would probably feel more comfortable with a cow, but I'll.
I apologize. That was for this bridge discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever mechanism.
Yeah, I think the cow meeting. I mean, that's a citywide. Bridges are citywide, so I think it should be a citywide decision by all council. Right. I think there's a second part of this presentation. The next component is the Weir update. Is that correct, Mr. City Manager?
That is correct.
Yes. Again, I hadn't originally planned to make this presentation, so bear with me.
Welcome to your new position.
Yes, thank you. That's what Paul said. Good luck. So, as you know, we have weirs at various places in the city, and a lot of those were placed to help with saltwater intrusion. Some of them were intended to be some measure of water quality. Some of those are there to slow down the release of fresh water and help recharge the groundwater. So we have 29 different locations where we have weirs. And the weirs are typically, like a dam in the canal that holds water back, and they have mechanisms to release water. Some of those are operable, where when we're getting an excess amount of rain, we can lower the weirs and let water out so that we don't create flooding. During the when we're not having so much rain, we can close those weirs and retain the water for irrigation. But like the bridges, they're all older. They're in need of repair. We had AIM Engineering do a study that looked at all of the weirs. And this is a breakdown. It's, you know, there's a lot of data there. And it went through and inventoried each bridge, each weir, and identified estimated cost for completion, and developed a program of repairs and rehabilitation to be done in the next 1 to 2 years, the next 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4, and 4 to 5 years. And you can see the totals for each year. And again, these costs are all in today's dollars. So the total for the minor weir maintenance was $1.8 million, and that would be, you know, completed in the next 5 years. That was for minor maintenance on various weirs. So then immediate repairs is $265,000, and then over the 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 identifies the cost for completing those improvements. And then there's some major upgrades that would happen over a longer time frame for actually replacing the weirs and adding some additional features so that they could be operated remotely. There's, I don't think any of them are operable remotely at this point. And that identifies how the cost and time frame would lay out for those repairs, upgrades. So that's about approximately $12 million for each of those various efforts. Oh, here we go. So, and I believe what we were recommending was to follow this breakdown with the funding for those improvements.
So, Mr. City Manager, what's the direction that you are asking for today? Looks like you have $1.8 million in repair that needs to be done over the next 5 years. You want to divide that over the 5-year period? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so the recommendation for the minor maintenance, so when we developed the stormwater rate model last year that was adopted, the increments, that was more about service level. We didn't have this report back. We since have gotten this report back. We don't believe funding the full $1.8 million in 1 year would be able to be supported. So our recommendation is to do the incremental 5-year plan for the minor maintenance in the budget, which would be 265, 380, about 370, you know, looking at the layout here.
Does the normal maintenance typically in the past been coming out of the stormwater fund?
Yeah, the weirs are under the stormwater. So this is not a millage rate or a property tax type 5 cent, 6 cent. These are a stormwater control system.
And have we raised the stormwater rates in the last 3 years?
We just went through a stormwater rate study last year, and we did increase the rates. There's an annual increase to the rates based upon that study.
Right.
This information, for the next 5 years, these numbers can be absorbed by the stormwater fund.
Without any increase.
The major upgrades are something we'll need to look at a little closer and from a timing standpoint about when those need to be done. And to come back to you with regard to that, you know, and whether you do these in chunks, in larger chunks, and what those mean. Again, we just received this, can be about 2 weeks ago, so there's more work to be done on the major upgrades. Now, I do want to point out there are times when utilities is doing some work on weirs. And when they're doing work on weirs, it's about irrigation. But it's about capacity of the irrigation system as opposed to the stormwater system, which is really what these weirs are designed for.
And just so I'm clear, two things. First, it appears there at some point in time will be a need in replacement of the weirs. So you have the replacement cost, and then you have a maintenance cost involved.
And this section here that shows the
Maintenance or
12 million, this is for the major replacement and upgrades that serve a lot of the irrigation function to make the weirs automatically operable so they can monitor them. And if it's going to rain a lot, they can lower them without having to have staff go out and manually do that. Or likewise, they can raise the weirs to retain water for irrigation purposes. So this is more of the replacement and upgrades in the future.
So the $1.8 million for the minor repairs, so I'm clear, are you asking us to add that into the budget, or are you asking to utilize the stormwater fund that already exists to pay for these improvements?
I think this is informational for you. We have the repairs that we need to make. So they'll be funded as far as the stormwater fund will be concerned, in order to repair them. The replacements, a portion of it, these weirs exist for flood control.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the stormwater operation, if we're going to be utilizing them for irrigation, then there might be split funding between utilities and stormwater for some of these repairs that are major repairs or major upgrades we're talking about, especially the electronically controlled. Because right now, I think the majority of our weirs, we have to go out there and wheel them up and down. So that's the major upgrades we're talking about. But it's a timing issue about holding back water for irrigation purposes.
So is today's presentation informational only, and you'll be coming back, or is there a specific ask today?
The ask is you're gonna see in the city manager's budget that 1.8 million over those 5 years. So I'm presenting it to you now, and if you give consensus, then I know it's approved. But you're gonna see those improvements, this right here, the minor maintenance, in the 5-year capital improvement plan.
So I guess my question, so I'm clear, is that $1.8 million coming out of the stormwater fees that already exist?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my point, Mr. Mayor, was it sounded like you guys are talking about two separate paths. So originally you said, well, yeah, we're asking for you guys to allocate the 1.8 million, but then Mr. Mason said, we just did the stormwater study, we did increase it last year, this can be
absorbed.
Absorbed.
Without raising any revenue. We were saying the same thing, but coming at it from a different approach.
Well, if it's absorbed, then it's absorbed under an existing, is the way that I interpret it, which I think is where the mayor was going. So then if that's the case, why are we being asked to set aside or allocate or line item 1.8 for this if it's being absorbed? I'm aware that I'm probably missing something. I'm asking what it is.
Some of this is just to present to you the results of the study that
So
you
you're just
budgeted.
telling us where you're going to spend the money.
Yeah. This doesn't require you to find new money or come up with new money.
That's what, to me, it sounded like. I wanted to make sure that was clear. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Steinke.
Thank you. In the next screen, with the years 1 through 5, years 5 through 10, and 10 through 15, the approximately $12 million in each of those periods of time, is that $12 million for the entire 5-year period, or is it $12 million per year?
It's over that 5-year span.
So would it be correct to assume then that 12 million divided by 5, making the math simple, you'd come up with the dollar amount that you need funding for those upgrades on top of the money we're talking about for the maintenance repairs that would be done over the next 5 years.
It is an addition, yes.
And are we looking for any type of direction on the major upgrades and whether those would be included in the budget?
Although I'm not looking for them today. Some of these major upgrades may be in the areas that we're going to be upgrading as far as the stormwater system in the northern part of the city. So I would take some of these upgrades, especially the Weir upgrades, and wrap them into the stormwater upgrades in the UEP areas. As far as some of the ones that are in the southern part of the city, it's really a matter of timing. And if we need to come back, I'm not going to fund these through the rates in a lump sum because that would spike the rates. I would recommend that we actually borrow the funds over a period of time and pay it back, just utilizing the rates that we currently have, and then we would, we would amend the rates going forward.
Okay.
We look at the rates every couple of 2-3 years, anyways. And so with this additional information that was not available to us when we went through the rate study last year, this will have an impact on them, but they don't need to be done today.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, Councilmember Hayden?
Yeah, just a quick question. It looks like, at least for the first 4 to 5 years, this isn't about replacing any weirs. A lot of it, at least under the immediate action, is just to clear debris away from a lot of these weirs. So there's really nothing wrong with the weir. It's just making them as optimal as possible and getting the debris out of the way. And then for future years, it looks like most of it's replacing the floating debris control boom. So it looks like there's specific areas on each of these weirs that need nothing major over the next 4 or 5 years, just making sure they operate as efficiently as they can, correct?
That's why there's the minor repairs for the first 5, and then you have the majors, which are longer term, 15 years out.
All right, if you're looking for direction from me, if you're asking to utilize $1.8 million for weir repairs directly from our existing stormwater fund, I'm okay with that, if that's what the ask is. I was under the perception initially that you were asking for an additional funding mechanism over and above to pay for the 1.8, but it sounds like that's not the case. So, with that being said, I'm okay with the repairs that need to be made as long as we're utilizing the existing stormwater fund that's already in existence. Any other?
Same way.
All right. Okay. Any other discussion under topic 5D, Mr. City Manager?
No.
Okay. We have one last item on the agenda before citizens' input. Do you have an approximate time that discussion may take? It's about 11:35 now. If we think that it's not going to be a lengthy discussion, I guess we can continue.
This will take 15 minutes to go through. The discussion is however long it takes.
And impact fees, I'm thinking that may be a item that's probably has some discussion. So I would recommend then, or at least open up for council. Do we want to continue to move forward, or do we want to go ahead and break for lunch here? Because not only do we have that topic for a discussion, then we also have citizens' input. So,
can we get lunch early?
They're not even set up yet.
Madam City Clerk.
Lunch is going to be set up at 11:45. I can go ask if they can bring it out sooner.
Okay, well, that's...
Or I guess we could take a 5-minute break, bathroom break, whatever, right now, and then even if it spends 30, 40 minutes, we roll into the lunch afterwards and then are done, theoretically, if the discussion doesn't go on too long. And that's, of course, inclusive of citizens' input and all of that. And then the day's done before lunch, we break. That's an option as well, I think, especially considering lunch isn't ready yet.
Well, it's 11:36. You said they were bringing it 11:45. I'm sorry?
The 5-minute break, it'll be here.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I think with that being said, we'll go ahead and just break for lunch. And do we want to, at 11:45, do we want to try to come back at maybe 12:45 instead of 1 o'clock?
Sure.
And
Or
go that path? Yeah.
How about 12:30?
12:30? Okay. Well, lunch has come 11:45. We can make it 11:50 and just eat quick. Okay. That's what we'll do. We'll adjourn now until 12:30. Test, test. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is item 5E is impact fee discussion. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to have Financial Service Director Mark Mason give this presentation.
Mayor and council members, Mark Mason, Financial Services Director. So real quick, we had a brief discussion regarding impact fees yesterday when we talked about the capital expansion charges for utilities. And the overall restrictions that are currently in the statute about the timing of when you can implement them, as well as the timing of whether you can implement all of it or some portion of it over a period of time. So one of the things that the four we're going to talk about today, because we've already decided what we're going to do with regard to transportation, we're going to be moving towards a mobility fee approach as opposed to the transportation or road impact fees that we currently charge. We're going to be talking about the fire rescue services, non-transport life support service, police services, as well as the parks and recreation or recreation facilities impact fees that we currently have in the system. So one of the more interesting esoteric facts that you might want to know is that the last time that we adjusted these fees was the last time I was here in 2004, 2005. So it's like comes back around, 10, 15 years later, and here we are again. So the one thing you can be rest assured on is our current impact fees, growth does not pay for growth. The last time, again, we implemented impact fees, change has occurred. The cost of new construction has changed. Some of the things that have been identified to fund with impact fees were not originally identified when we developed the impact fees in 2004, 2005. So we have some options that we're going to talk about. We can leave them as they are. We can go out and do a study, which is what we're recommending. And that's just here. And this page is actually repeated again at the end. So first and foremost on the police. So public safety impact fee, this is fire and rescue services. When the impact fee was originally developed in 2006, the idea of a training center was not included in that analysis. And so in general, when you develop impact fees, you're developing them on a 5-year basis. We're looking 5 years forward. What's the cost going to be? Because there's enough change in the cost construction index to warrant the fact that you would actually look at your impact fees at least a minimum of every 5 years. And that is to keep up with the whole idea of growth paying for growth. Impact fees are only applicable to new construction. So when the new construction happens, your impact in the overall system, depending on what that system is, in this case, it would be fire services. So when we developed the impact fee in 2006, I had to go back and I had to look at some of the information that was included in there. We were thinking, I believe at the time, we were looking at 3 additional fire stations. We had just gone in and had I think, started up or developed the process of converting a house up in Gator Circle into a fire station. And originally it was designed for a rescue unit, and then it was changed over. We put I think we put an apparatus up there, built a yeah. And this fire chief's back there going, yep, I was here, I remember that. So there are many other things that occurred. But at the same time, since then, we've built 3 more fire stations that were well exceeded the cost of the fire stations that we had built back in 2005. If I remember correctly, what's the station on Santa Barbara? 4? Station 4 on Santa Barbara, I think, was $2.5 million. Fire stations today are costing you about $5 million a piece, $6 million, and the cost is simply going up as not only the building code changes, the requirements for us to meet certain wind load requirements, et cetera, the cost of building fire stations is going up. And so we're looking at right now, I think through build out, 16 fire stations, if I'm not mistaken. If there's any vertical growth in any part of the city that will likely require an additional fire station or expansion of fire stations at some time in the future. But in this case, looking at just the estimated cost of 3 additional fire stations into the future, that would be approximately $16 million. This would be over the next 5 years or thereabouts. And we would also look at the fire training facility, which is currently built into your 6-year AMP programming. That will all told, it would come out over about the next 7 years, potential residential units that we'd be talking about coming on board based upon the study that you just saw yesterday morning, about 12,000 units. Looking at the potential cost of new fire, or at the current cost, it's of $574.96. That's the current impact fee associated with new residential construction. Be about almost $7 million, and then with the potential of 1 million extra additional square feet of commercial space, we'd be looking at about an additional $153,000. Right now, the commercial rate is so low with regard to the response or the cost of the service that's being provided, is that if nothing else, that's the very first thing that we would have to adjust. All told, we're talking about $31 million in estimated cost versus about $7 million in impact fees. So that is what we would see over at least a minimum of the next 7 years if we built the 3 fire stations we're talking about, as well as absorb the cost associated with the fire training facility through build out. The advanced life support non-transport ALS impact fee is it's a fairly small fee, and I remember when we put it in place in 2006, there was a growth in the desire to have the training and the equipment necessary that when the firefighters arrived on scene, before the ambulances showed up, that they would have the capacity and the capability to provide some type of advanced life support on site. The overall, when we originally set this up, right now we would only be talking about the 3 additional fire stations. As a portion of those fire stations, approximately $960,000. Currently, the rate that we would be able to collect is about $430,900 based upon the same parameters I just gave you, 12,000 additional units over 7 years, as well as 1 million square feet. And that's versus about $1.3 million. So again, growth in this particular circumstance is not paying for growth. On the police services side, when we developed that particular fee, it was primarily associated with the facility that's currently across the street. And it was the capacity difference between where they were currently residing as far as the police department was concerned, which is now the annex. That's where the police department used to be. And when we were looking at the expansion of the existing facility, the capacity change for the police department was built into the impact fee when we updated that impact fee. Now we're talking about some additional things. We've gone out and we've built a training facility, or we're in the process of building a training facility in the north part of the city. None of this was currently included in the impact fee study, but nevertheless, we are utilizing the impact fees for that particular purpose because we've already built the police station that's across the street. And at the same time, if we were using the impact fees during that period of time to pay off the debt service, there'd be no impact fees available to do the police training facility. And then, of course, there is a desire at some point to create substations in the four corners of the city to create a localized police presence, as opposed to people having to drive into the main station for whatever reason that they need to come into to the police department. And, you know, this is, I mean, I don't see yes, the police chief is here, thank you. You know, from a community policing standpoint, which I'm not an expert in, but he certainly is, having local substations would be a benefit from a community policing standpoint. So in this particular circumstance, if we were talking about a 5,000 square foot facility, if we were to build one, a 5,000 square foot facility at four, throughout the four quadrants of the city at $500 per square foot, we'd be talking about $10 million versus the potential impact fee collections that we would see based upon the same parameters of 12,000 residential units and 1 million square feet. We'd be collecting at about $7.3 million, which is substantially less than what it would cost to build these substations. So overall, when it comes to the public safety impact fees, currently growth is not paying for growth. And we would certainly recommend that we evaluate that against the future CIP, the 5 or 6 year CIP, and determine what the rate should be, and then amend that accordingly. For the recreation facilities, the last time that was updated was in 2002, specifically December 16, 2002. I remember having a conversation in 2005, 2006 when we were doing the other impact fees. And at the time, there didn't seem to have been a desire to adjust the recreation impact fee at that time. And interestingly enough, at that time, we just started seeing the overall growth in the sale price of land when we were in the process of purchasing both the Lake Mead property as well as the it just slipped my mind. It's a big one that's up north. There you go, Festival Park, thank you. When we were purchasing that. And I think it was in 2005 is when we did the resolution of necessity on Festival Park. And at the time, based upon the current number of permits that were being pulled in that particular area, it appeared that there would be sufficient resources in the impact fees that would have covered that. Since then, there's been no touching of this particular impact fee, and the impact fee at a little over $1,000 per unit, you know, would unlikely pay for one park, let alone the number of parks that we may be looking at going into the future. So we would certainly recommend that the fact that we haven't looked at this particular impact fee in 21 years, it would be something that we would look at as part of our recommendation to begin the process of updating our impact fees and through a study. And so that is our recommendation. Yes, sir. The swim if you wanted to do a swim complex, yes, it could be paid for from park impact fees because it would be a capacity enhancement to the current system. But at the same time, it's not built into the impact fees. And one of the interesting parts, you know, that I showed you here is that we currently are utilizing the impact fees to pay debt service on the land that we bought in both Lake Mead as well as Crystal Lake and Festival Park. At our current rate, it takes about almost 2,500 permits, single-family permits, in order to pay the annual debt service. So in order to keep up with the annual debt service, that's how many permits we end up having to pull on an annual basis. In, I think, between 2010 and 2018, thereabouts, I believe the general fund was picking up the debt service for that land. because of the reduced number of permits that were actually being issued between 2011 and actually 2009 and 2018. So the idea would be not only to get to a point where we're continuing to fund the remainder of the debt service on the land acquisition for those 3 parks, but at the same time also having the appropriate resources in place through new construction and the impact of new construction on the system to pay for any new future parks that might be coming down the line through the park, the study that you heard about earlier this morning. Does anybody want to continue reading that? So, does anybody have any questions?
Okay, I'll open it up for City Council to have any questions. Councilmember Steinke.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, although I would speak in favor of doing the impact study. Certainly, we would want growth to pay for growth, if at all possible. And with the thought of the aquatic center, I think we spoke of surveying our citizens to see if an aquatic center was still of interest to them. Certainly, while we could do that, the impact fee study, I would like to see it with and without the aquatic center, given some certain assumptions of what that aquatic center would look like. Simply because that I think in general the public would like to have an aquatic center more centrally located in our city. When our city was young and the yacht club had the swimming pool there, it was it serviced those residents that we had because that's where they were. Today they're distributed across a much larger area, and to have a center like that for them to enjoy as well as to attract people here for commerce with our businesses by holding the swim competitions at every competitive level. I think that's something that we should certainly include a with and without to see what would the difference be in those impact fees if we wanted to include it there.
Okay.
Councilmember Welsh.
How long would the impact fee study take to get done?
I would probably say about 4 to 6 months.
So I'd be in favor of starting that as soon as possible. Like I've said all day today, it seems like we're coming up behind the curve on a lot of things, and I don't want to push it any further. I'd rather get on it and get it done.
Okay. Councilmember Shepherd.
Continue the impact study.
Yeah, for me also, I think most of the time we make our decisions on the data that we have before us, so having that data is crucial in making a good informed decision. So I would like to see the study, and also not only similar sized cities as far as the evaluation, but also I'd kind of like the surrounding areas, maybe Collier, Lee, and Charlotte County.
Whatever study we do, you'll always see a comparison to the surrounding area, et cetera.
Okay.
We would always do that.
All right, so I'd be in favor of the study.
Just a quick question. I'm in favor of the study also. I'm just curious, when the study's being done, are they, when they're forecasting the need, are they going based on what's been requested or what's been approved for future development and use?
Essentially, if we start this, say, next week, we put out the RFP, it's going to be built on our current A&B. That's what it'll be built on, our current asset management program, current capital improvement program, current everything. We can add in the idea of doing an aquatic center. We'll talk about what the estimated cost of that is, because the impact fee is built on cost. And so it's capacity improvement to the system. We'd have to evaluate what that capacity improvement is, and then make that determination from there.
Thank you. I was just wondering how it would be calculated, and just that helps. Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion? You get the direction you're looking for, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mason. Okay, next item on the agenda is citizens input. Citizens input is maximum
Mayor.
60.
Mayor, I'm sorry for interrupting. wanted to go back to the final page of the budget document that we had talked yesterday to kind of get some direction with regard to that particular document. I'm prepared to take you back to that. Sorry. Whoa, you're like 100 some odd slides to go through.
What page in the budget book, Mr. Mason, are you referencing?
66. Not in the budget book, it's in the presentation, page 66. I'm almost there. It shouldn't take too much longer. That's the page.
So are you looking for input from City Council on the 4 items that you got listed there?
Yes, sir. We are.
Okay. So I guess we'll just...
And I mean, this isn't an absolute. This is something for us to work on as we get to the development of the budget. So, you know, as an example, if you have priorities other than what we've already prioritized in the system, other than what we talked about over the, excuse me, over the last day and a half, you know, some of the things that we've talked about are some of the priorities I think you've already, you know, expressed. But if there are things that are over and above that we have not talked about today and yesterday, then that would be included in those particular areas. As far as the fire service assessment, if we want to leave it where it is, we want to change it or do something different, this is a good time for us to be able to work off of that. Same on the public service tax. If you want to leave it where it is, if you want to change it, if you want to do something different, again, you know, we would come back and we would tell you what those numbers are and what that impact would be. And on the millage rate, again, it's the same thing. We need some kind of guidance to help us, you know, in developing where we're going as far as the millage rate is concerned. So if the guidance was, well, leave it where it is, you know, and develop your budget accordingly, then that's what we'll do. You know, but at the same time, we'll also come back, you know, with, you know, options somewhere along the way, but that's what we would end up doing. It's basically what we did last year.
Okay. I guess I'll open it up for discussion. But for me, I mean, my answer is, I think, fairly simple. As far as item number 1, that I think that maybe council could forward that priority list of projects to the city manager, and then in return, we all get a list, maybe at a committee of the whole here soon, and see collectively as a body what some of our priorities are. And then as a body, I think we could prioritize any of the list that's provided. You know, we could probably sit here all day and have that conversation on just item number 1. So I think that may be a good way to move forward for item number 1 for me anyway. Fire service assessment, public service tax, and millage rate. For me, probably like we've done in the past, is start that as a baseline, and then once you take a look at that baseline, then that's when we have future discussions later if we want to decrease or increase any of those, what the financial impact is, and as a result, what needs to be cut out of the budget if it's a decrease. That's how we've done it in the past, and that seems to work well. Even if the year that we went back to the rollback rate, I think that's exactly the approach. And then we went back to the rollback rate and went back and readdressed some of the priorities that we had within the budget and, address them accordingly to meet the overall budget objective to go back to the rollback rate. So for me, items 2, 3, and 4 just stay constant, develop the budget on that, then have further discussions at a later time to try to massage that budget accordingly and see where we end up. A lot of times, kind of like we did with the parking at the yacht club, sometimes I like to try to back into that number. So if we identify what our priorities are and what we want to try to get accomplished for the next fiscal year, then you have to see what it's going to cost to do that. So for me, that's the approach that I take a lot of times. Try to identify the priorities, what you want to get done in the budget, then see how much it can cost. And then at that time, once you see how much it can cost, you adjust the budget accordingly. So that's my recommendation personally. Good.
Yeah, number one, I agree. Hello? Number one, I agree. We do that as you just described. We couldn't get that done today, I'm sure. 2, 3, and 4. I'll start with 2 and 3. 2 and 3, I think we leave it as is. I think we're going to base this on the new projected best estimate property value, correct? We're not using today's, Mark?
Yes, sir.
We're using the dollar figure I think you've talked about before was the property value, the anticipated property value for the city is what we're going to use to forecast our budget with these?
Correct.
Okay. Then I would say 2 and 3 we leave the same. We're going to recognize an increase there anyway, but the cost recovery based on the value, if we leave it as is, I would think. Millage rate, we know we're going to experience an increase in value, which would I would like to be able to see what the number is with the rollback rate. I don't know how difficult that is. I mean, I don't disagree with the backing into it as you described, from where we start from. But if we go to at least we know the difference. I don't know how easy that is to calculate.
I cannot calculate it today.
You can't do it? Not today. Not today.
Until the certified values come out.
Correct. Well, the same thing would be true with if we left it as is, correct?
As is, we would be forecasting off what, the current millage rate at whatever the value is that we've projected, which right now is a 6% increase.
Okay, so, all right, I'm just trying to...
So, in effect, what I showed you yesterday is that we have a balanced budget based upon the numbers that we provided from last year for 2005. We are now going to go back through and look at some of the information that was put in there at least a couple of years ago on some of the operating costs for the city, as well as if we have to adjust for any vehicle replacements that need to be replaced today versus when we originally projected them to be replaced. There's a lot of factors that go into the development of the overall budget, but we have a baseline budget today. That baseline budget builds off of the fact that we expected the millage rate to stay the same, and there's a 6% increase in value.
So the baseline budget you're referring to is the one that we forecasted for 2025 already?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to be working from that number?
We start with that number,
okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That's good.
Yeah, maybe just for Councilmember Carr's knowledge, last year's, could you give him last year's, was it the same 6% that we kind of budgeted for FY24 as an increase in the assessed values?
No, I think we were actually...
I know what it actually ended up being, but
yeah,
was it
we
10?
originally budgeted at 10%,
10%,
and
yeah,
it came in
that's
at
what I
13.
But you wanted the budget lower originally.
We did.
We discussed. Okay.
Correct.
Just trying to
However, the market has changed over the course of the last year, and I would say that I don't think that we've seen a massive increase in the overall values or the sale of homes. So the change in values that we're likely being seen is going to be the new construction, which we've already estimated is going to add $1.5 billion to the overall budget, but $1.5 billion represents about 3.4% of the current $26 billion that we are at. So if we see an additional increase and over and above that, as I said, we're budgeting at 6%. If we saw an 8% increase, it's just going to be a 2% change from where we are today. But that 2% change could be absorbed by, certain things that are going to occur during the course of the remainder of this year, one of which we'll be talking about next Wednesday, labor.
Okay. All right, so I guess to clarify, Councilmember Carr, as far as items 2, 3, and 4, what's your recommendation?
Well, I think, based on the answer to the question, that we're using the originally forecasted number in 2025 to work from, I'm fine with leaving it as is.
Okay. All right. Everyone else?
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
So we're going to forward our funding priorities later, right? We're not talking about that right now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we could be here all day just on that topic alone.
Okay. For me, kind of like the mayor said, I would rather, once we know more, kind of back in and figure out what we need to do. I'd rather do what's best for the city versus just going in saying I want to go at this rate. But just for just so you know where I'm comfortable with, I would be comfortable keeping the fire service assessment the same or decreasing it. I'm not a fan of raising that. Keep the public service tax the same and be flexible if we need to with the millage rate.
I did a quick check here as it relates to fire service assessment and public service tax. And in comparison to neighboring and similar cities, our public service tax is actually the lowest of those in the comparative study. So certainly, if we can leave that the same, I think that would be good. Our fire service assessment, that is slightly below average, the average of those comparative cities. So if we can keep that the way it is, I think that would be a good way to go. And I agree with keeping the millage rate flexible at this point after we see what the effect of the inflationary pressures on the expenses that we know that we have are, the additional things that we've already committed to, and then taking a look at what those funding priorities are and what we feel will be the most important, and then address the millage rate at that time.
Councilmember Welsh.
Thank you. For items 2 and 3, I think keeping them the same is fine with me. As far as item 4 goes, last year we just got the option of keep it the same or the rollback rate. I know in previous years we had an option, I think it was called the fallback rate, or the midway between the current and the rollback. So if you're developing the budget this year, I'd like to see what that rate might be and what could be funded with that. Do you remember what, I think it was like 2 or 3 budgets ago we had those different options. So if we could work that in, that'd be something I'd be interested in.
Councilmember Long.
Yeah, as far as number 2 or 3, I don't envision a scenario personally where I would support increasing that. I think remaining the same as a baseline. And then for the millage rate, I think it'd be fair, both to this body and your staff as well. I think it's a reasonable baseline to assume that we would keep it the same, just for purposes of moving forward and kind of getting a little bit more dirty with or familiar with that data. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Keeping 2 and 3 where they're at, and the millage rate, either keep it where it's at or, if possible, lower it.
Councilmember Hayden.
I have no problem with point number 1. Mike, I would like, though, because it affects my funding priorities, if we could get an update. In 2016, when we did the sidewalk study, I think we were at 8 or 9% of all our roads had sidewalks, which was obviously a low number. I would like to see in the last 7.5, 8 years, how that percentage may have changed, because that'll affect my funding priorities moving forward. And as I look at talking with you and the rest of council about a 10-year master plan for future sidewalks. I'm good on where 2 and 3 are right now. As far as the millage rate, I don't know that I'm going to change from my previous stance any of the last 3 years. I will not be voting for a reduced rate because this isn't about tomorrow. This is about the future of our city. And any time we reduce the millage rate, it's impacted deficits that we face moving forward. And we know what a year can bring because we just went through Ian and the recovery from that and how that impacts reserves. So it would take a lot for me to move off my position of wanting to lower the millage rate. So as things stand today, I'm keeping the millage rate the same as where I'm at.
Okay, you get the direction for Mr. City Manager?
I did, thank you.
Okay. Is that all on this topic now? Okay. All right. Now we'll move on to item 6, citizens' input time. The maximum of 60 minutes is set for the input of citizens on matters concerning city government, 3 minutes per individual. Please remember to state your name. I believe we have a staff member over there that will give you the mic. You can just stand where you're at. And our city clerk will monitor the 3 minutes. You'll hear a buzzer go off, and that's when your time will cease. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Angela Wilkinson. I am a 5th grade teacher at Oasis Elementary North. I'm attending this meeting to encourage all of you to increase Oasis charter teachers' salaries by 10%. And I ask you this to keep up with the cost of living. Many of our teachers are looking at second jobs. Other teachers are looking to go to the county. To give you a little background, well, let me tell you, the Florida Department of Revenue states in their latest cost of living adjustment, 2024 expected increase was 4.1%. 2023 had an 8% increase for cost of living. 2022 was a 4% increase cost of living. We have not seen any increases for cost of living for any of we've seen minimal amounts. As you can see, we're totaling over 16% of cost of living over the last few years. Oasis teachers need raises. To give a brief background, Oasis Charter Schools began in 2005, nearly 20 years ago. System has 4 schools. 2 are elementary schools, 1 is a middle school, and 1 is a high school. We are an accredited school. Since 2018, we have all 4 schools have rated A nationally, A in our grades and our test scores. The academic success is attributed to a clear, unique curriculum. This charter's vision supports the district's vision of ensuring each student achieves his or her highest potential. We succeed at doing that. We produce very insightful children. Our graduation rate last year from the high school was over 98%. That's huge. If you look at the city, if you look at the county or outlying counties, you're not going to get those responses. We had over 85% of our children graduate and go on to college. 6% went on to vocational school, another 3 or 4% undecided. We are your school. We are a municipal charter school. We are you and you are us. We're all together. We make Cape Coral shine. Data now my arms are shaking, but data shows which state spends the most money per student. Do you know where we rank? The state ranks 44.
Thank you. Thank you for your input.
Just one last comment. We're requesting that our budget, your budget, increase, and that we get an increase for our teachers as the county schools have increased 5
Thank you,
to
ma'am.
11%. And
Go ahead and wrap it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How's that? Louder? Okay. All right, so I didn't prepare my remarks, but I'm
State
up
your
here.
name to start with, ma'am,
My
please.
name is Patty Schumacher, and I live at 2532 Sutherland Court. I'm a resident here in Cape Coral, and my issue is affordable housing. This comes up rather consistently, but then it kind of gets shuffled back. And just want to reiterate that taxes, fees, assessments have a big impact on the affordability of housing. And as an example, I would like to give my own experience. I bought a condo here in 2021, and because of a family situation, it was more better for me to rent it out than to live there. And so I have this tenant. She's a very good tenant, and I know her personal situation. I'd like to keep her. I would also like to help her out because I know her personal situation, and it would be a hardship for her to move. But it is becoming increasingly unaffordable for me to keep it affordable for her. A lot of that driver is taxes. So you need to be very mindful of needs versus wants. And I know there's a lot of things we would want for the community, but we need to address needs, and affordable housing is one. And don't tell me that you're considering levying a tax to subsidize rents and housing, because that's another tax that adds to the unaffordability or affordability of housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Terry. I live over on 29th Place in Northwest Cape Coral. And this is a surprise. I came in to speak to Mercola Market and walked by the room and found out you guys were meeting. So, since it is a budget meeting, I'm just putting this out there. I represent a company called Oasis, and they have a wellness program that companies and municipalities are putting into place right now, and it affords your employees a 40-point award-winning wellness program, which includes physical, mental, financial, and family health. This is installed at a net zero cost to the company or the municipality. It's zero cost to install this plan. The city would save approximately $500 per employee on average per year. I believe you have about 2,000 employees. Is that right? That's $1 million savings to the city right there. And they also have a workman's comp program where they offer the workman's comp premiums at a non-commissionable rate, which means they remove the commission out of the workman's comp premium policies. And that alone can save 8 to 18% of what the city is spending. So the wellness program that can be installed for the city, the part of the financial health or wellness includes a guaranteed issue permanent cash value life insurance policy for the employees at a net zero cost to the employees and the employer. So when this program is installed, the employees, it's paid through payroll, but the net income, the take-home pay for the employees does not change. So it makes a happier, healthier workforce, which in turn has been proven to have less workman's comp claims, and well, the employees are just happier. The happier employee, the better service to the citizens of this city that can take place. So that's something in consideration. I'd love to speak to someone about that and see what we can do about getting this installed. But this alone can make a better workforce for the citizens of this city, and save you guys a lot of money in the meantime.
Thank you.
Hello, Tom Shadrack, permanent resident of Cape Coral. Just a few things. First of all, just one of the statistics I saw on the parks. I've heard a couple of people want that aquatic center, saying that's what we need. I don't disagree with that. I wouldn't mind an aquatic center, but the statistics don't support it. Back in 2016, the residents didn't want it in the parks plan, and those demographics are the same today. The average age is 45 in this city, and there's no more children today in the school system than there were 8 years ago. That's in your CFR, the annual CFR. Same data, okay? So you said you want to be data-driven? Look at the data. We do have a good lobbying group that wants that. You're listening to them. That's good. I'm all for it too. But you probably, as the average citizen, won't want it. Last Wednesday at the COW, I mentioned some statistics, $28 million tax dollar increase in your property tax and the FSA. I've talked to the city manager twice about that this weekend, or the last 2 days. I think he confirms that my numbers were accurate. They were not inaccurate. And as Mr. Hayden made the motion on the millage rate, it was a 12.99% increase over the rollback rate is what you approved for the millage rate last year, even though you used the same millage rate. It was a tax dollar increase, and that's the same thing you're doing right here today. You made that decision, what it looks like to me. Priorities? Mine are fix what's broken and needs repair. That's the Yacht Club Marina and Pier, Project Sparkle, get that done. Finish the already funded projects. There's 7 pages of open projects here in the city. Festival Park, just go with the original phase 1 plan. Get the maintenance facility done. Do the canal bridges and weirs. That's a maintenance issue to me. Get a parking garage down in the CRA. And then all the surpluses, save that for the Gobon Parks and the final Yacht Club build out. That would be my priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak during citizens' input? Seeing none, citizens' input is now closed. Oh, where? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. Where'd he come from? Ah.
Hello, I'm Robert Carr, resident and small business owner here in Cape Coral. And I just have an idea while you're considering master plans for maybe a different master plan. I have a wife who's a bit of an environmental activist and is concerned about global warming, and I am not. But after Hurricane Ian took our roof off last year, she convinced me that we should put a solar panel on our house. So we installed a 10 kilowatt solar panel not quite a year ago, and I'm glad to say that it's worked out financially quite well. In fact, this last year, in November, we bought an electric vehicle to take advantage of the free electricity that we're generating. And I'm just wondering, since the city seems to have a $3 or $5 million a year electric bill, if perhaps you might come up with a long-range plan to incorporate solar while the federal government is handing out subsidies that could reduce that by at least 70 or 80%, I would say. Just something for you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak during citizens' input? Anybody else hiding behind? Okay, seeing none, citizens' input is now closed. Is there any council discussion on citizens' input? Go ahead, Councilmember Carr.
I'd just like to acknowledge the teacher from Oasis that's here today. Question, are you representing yourself, or do you have some sort of official role as a teacher there, representing all teachers?
Just the teacher that is representing everybody.
Okay.
Friends and colleagues, yep.
I mean, do you have an official title or role within that?
I'm a fifth grade interventionist.
Okay, thank you. My daughter teaches there, so just curious about. Yep. I'm in support of, obviously, education and teachers in the city in our program. Both my children attended Oasis from the day they opened. My daughter is a graduate of the system and now teaches there. Very proud to say. But it's dollars and cents. If it was my money, I'd happily pay everyone what they like to be paid, right? But I would like to understand better about the numbers, Mark, and I know that we do play a role in the budget with the Oasis charter system, and in comparison specifically to Lee County, right? Because end of the day, I know when we as a city opened the school system, we put the state pension system there for the reason, I believe, to be able to recruit from other school districts and be able to fill the ranks of our educators more easily. With that also gives them the flexibility of leaving as well, if that were to be their choice. I don't necessarily buy into that theory, personally. I know that right now they're not hiring. I looked at our website. We don't have any teacher positions posted, which I'm thrilled with as a resident of this city. In contrast, the county has hundreds of openings for teachers. I think there's a reason for that. And I have had the short experience of working with the Lee County School District and met with many of their educators who I have the utmost respect for after getting a closer look at the roles that they play. I would just like to know, from a budgetary standpoint and the ability to provide raises, I know that they're treated differently, they are separate. However, from the referencing other, they are city employees, as they're paid through a city payroll, correct?
They're not city employees.
They're not city employees.
They are not.
They do receive city benefits?
They participate in our health plan.
Okay. I guess we do supplement their budget?
We do
From time to
not.
time? Never. So their cost is.
So a little history on the charter school. If could I?
Sure. And I apologize. Just indulge me. I think it's an important topic, and not just because my daughter's a teacher there.
And I would like to have a separate meeting with you to go over the numbers.
I'd like
but
that.
Just a little brief history. When we started the charter school system, we actually set up a 401A program. And we went through that for about a year and a half, and the then superintendent or administrator of the school system had recommended that, like other teachers in the system, that our charter school probably should participate in the state pension system. Okay. Because they weren't employees of the city, they couldn't participate in ours. So there was only one other one that was available to them. And so from that point forward, we were hiring, we had teachers coming over from the county, and they were coming over primarily because of the system, the education system that we had built in the charter school system. At that time, we were not required to follow strictly the Florida Department of Education's curriculum, and we're still not required to follow it strictly. We had actually developed two different curriculums, one at the elementary school and another one at the middle school. And then when the high school came in, we had a different one. And smaller class sizes, more parent participation required as part of the charter school system changed how the teachers and what their responsibilities were. And so that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of folks leaving us. And if they do leave us, they're leaving us for not because it's a pay issue that I'm aware of. So this past year, Lee County passed a new contract. As part of that new contract, they had a one-time increase of 8.5%, and it depended on where you landed within the school system and how many years you were there, depended on what your pay raise was. What unfortunately, a lot of people just went straight to the highest pay raise, and those folks, they had to be there for quite some time before, to get that one. But the base pay raise, I think, was in the 3 to 4% range. The charter school system lives on a fixed, literally a fixed income. which is a little bit different than the Lee County does, but mainly because it's a larger school system and they have a lot more resources. But we live on a fixed income, and it's on the FEFP funding. And that FEFP funding determines what the availability of resources are. The state generally will put some type of pay raise included in the FEFP funding for teachers. If you have other resources, you're able to pay for other things. What the county was able to do, when I say the county, the school district was able to do this past year is they changed how they were busing students. And the largest share of the busing of the students was at the elementary school system, and Mike has talked with their superintendent out there. And because of that change, they were able to keep a lot, what were they saving, $10,000 a day in busing? Per week?
The shifting in the busing, so my question was, because we had, over the past several months, questions raised by various teachers, administrators on, if the school district can do it, how, why can't we? And so when I spoke to the school superintendent, my question was, did you find new revenues with the tax increase, or were you able to repurpose recurring revenues? And he said there was some of both, but by and large, a majority of the funding for the increase that they were able to do above and beyond just a standard like CPI increase came from the changing in the busing, which is saving the district on average $10,000 per week per school. And so they took those dollars and then repurposed them into from operating into payroll in order to award that. And so, I made both Ms. Collins aware of that as well as Mark to see if there was a way to repurpose any existing programs or look at, things. 'Cause when you give a raise, if it's not a bonus one time, we have to have recurring revenues, to continue to pay for that year after year. And so I believe that they've been trying to meet to see if there's any way to look at existing programming. Obviously, we don't have the busing system to, or can say, hey, we're only going to pick up kids from these 3 blocks to save that kind of revenue.
So at this point, there is no recurring revenue that can actually be applied towards a consistent pay increase. But we are, in fact, talking in February, and if we had the meeting this past week, the board would have been asked to approve a bonus, a one-time bonus from resources that were saved, as well as put in place a recurring annual longevity bonus that would have been applied as well. But from unless there's a different revenue source that's going to come in and it's going to pay for a consistent pay increase year over year, they don't have that.
Right.
And we've made that abundantly clear with them.
Sometimes the trickle-down effect, I don't think, occurs the way everyone would like with regard to information, right? And I guess
agree.
that's part of the reason I'm bringing it up for discussion.
Sure.
Thank you for the explanation about what the county did. I knew that. Thank you for saying it and not me having to do it.
Sure.
When you just mentioned a bonus that they're trying to implement, you said it was going to be recurring, not
No,
just
it's one time.
One time. Okay.
Now, the longevity is something that can be absorbed on a recurring basis because it's a one-time thing, and usually it's not something you actually give every single year. It's when you hit a certain milestone is usually when you do the longevity. But if you have an annual longevity, the dollar value we've calculated, they can absorb into their current budget.
I just think it'd be nice, good for everyone to be with the same understanding about what the real numbers are. And I think that the county numbers, in comparison to our numbers, are not significantly higher, even within the steps that they have published, at least from what I've seen.
There's almost no difference. And we have not adjusted our step plan, but the charter school system cannot operate in the same format as the district. No charter school system does.
Right.
The district just simply has a larger bucket of resources than a charter school does.
Right.
And unless they want to, get donations from people to pay more or something like that, we simply do not have those resources to be able to do that unless we make a decision to do something different.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that, and I agree with everything that's been said here. I just also wanted to say that they are an apples and orange comparison to me. The Lee County School District school system and our OASIS system are dramatically different, I believe, in the way they operate and their educational outcomes. I believe we have a fantastic staff, and retention is critically important. But I think the fact that we're not hiring a teacher today says a lot about our school system, and I'm happy to hear that too. Mike, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did, since we're discussing this, I did have a request from Superintendent Collins to look, so when you're looking at recurring expenses that they have along the lines of kind of repurposing expenses they currently have now, there was a request for the city to consider altering the terms of their lease that they have right now on the table that they're operating under, to make us more of a landlord where we would take over the maintenance and all the aspects, and they would just pay us a lease rate. Right now, the way the lease is structured, when we originally built the schools, they were to basically fully fund everything. And so there has been a request. I have not analyzed it. I don't know if you've had any further discussions, but they have requested restructuring their lease that would, in the hope of reducing their cost, their outlay annually, that would free up some revenue for the teachers.
Currently, with the lease agreement that the City Council approved a year ago now, a little over 2 years ago now, the city did pick up all the costs associated with maintaining the buildings. So they, at this current rate, sorry, Mike, but we do have that cost of paying for that. I think one of the things they may want us to do is pick up the cost of, maybe a portion of the cost of custodial, or reduce those costs or something like that.
I may have misspoke. I didn't get I asked her to work with the finance director, but there was some of restructuring the lease.
Yeah, they would like to, decrease the cost of what they pay the city for the backroom operations.
Just one more question. I know that there was an increase related to a state mandated number, correct, in the past?
Correct.
What if that were to happen again? I don't know how we handled it last time. How do you handle it if it happens again?
State funds it through the RFESP.
The state funded
yes.
that increase. Okay,
Correct.
Perfect. All right. So that's a potential.
Yeah, when the state mandates that sort of thing right now, it's
so it's not an unfunded mandate.
It's not an unfunded mandate to us.
Thank you.
Councilmember Long?
Thank you. Thank you for coming to speak. The charter school is something that I'm happy to support fully as well. It's a system I believe in. I've got my kids in that system, and they continue to excel by almost every metric as far as an academic institution could, especially when you compare them with their immediate surrounding institutions. I guess what the question will be, this is something that continues to come up, and more or less, which is accurate, we're provided with the answer that it's self-funded and that's sort of their problem. And meanwhile, we do find ways to inadvertently provide them with benefits to free up their budget so that they would, in theory, relieve some of that strain, that financial strain on the teachers. And so you talk about the lease and the school buses, and we've done that. But I guess what I've seen, and I'm also to remind you guys, I sit on the charter school board as well as the council liaison, so I may or may not be a little bit more in tune with this. But a lot of the statistics, when you look at them in a vacuum, it's short. I don't know that saying that we don't have anybody that's leaving from that system is a de facto answer to their satisfaction as it relates to their pay. I think it's because of the other immeasurables, which we try to quantify when we say that they're smaller classrooms, right? And those sorts of things. And so what we're asking the teachers to do in theory is to eat what they perceive to be a pay decrease when you compare that to going to the county in exchange for their own personal comfort by way of having smaller classrooms, having a better environment, whether it be a different curriculum than the county. And so for me, is that something that we want to put them in the position of having to make that decision. Do we want them to say, hey, I'll have to try to scrape by because I don't want to go into a situation maybe at the county that I'm going to be less happy with or I have a less quality of life, and that decision be solely based on the numbers. So as long as I'm sitting in this seat, I will continue to try to find ways to fund that system. And what we've done is great, but I think at a certain point we need to try to think about maybe other direct methods of funding or supplementing that system as it pertains directly to the salaries of these educators and their support staff. And so, Mark, when you said they receive funding per child from the state, that's true. And so again, you go back to sort of being a victim of their own success, as they have smaller classrooms, smaller students, and so they receive in turn a smaller allocation or portion of those funds. If they increase those class sizes, I think what we're going to see is that those statistics that we parade out in front of everyone as being a successful program and our program, that's when we're happy to say it's our program, right? Is when we're saying, hey, look at the data, we have one of the best municipal programs in the state. And then in turn, when it comes time to pay for that, we always find a way to dodge the bullet and say, hey, that's self-funded, that's their issue. They need to find a way to do that. And frankly, from what I'm seeing when I look at the budget, it's razor thin, and they don't have that funding. So if we continue to kick the can and say, hey, that's not our obligation, eventually we will lose those educators that are valuable, and slowly that data will start to come more in line with the county, and then we won't have that comparable when it comes time to say, hey, do we want to keep this around and fund it directly? And we say, well, at that point in time, in theory, if we do lose those educators, the numbers are more or less the same. Let's let the county swallow them up. And that's not something in the long term that I would be comfortable with looking back on. So if we could have a discussion a little bit more in depth at CAL or at the next budget as far as what that might look like, or even if we could, and it may be that the city attorney would also have to figure out legislatively or by ordinance or however, if we did want to do a line item or even a referendum. I know the timing is terrible on that, but I would love to explore a way to try to create a revenue fund or something. We talk about things here, revenue funds, a special fund for medians, maybe a revenue fund for our own charter school system. I have no idea what that might look like, but I would love to explore that. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I sat on the governing board as well, so I understand the revenue source that they do have. There's about 3,000 students at Oasis, and as mentioned, they get a fee per pupil, and that's what that FEFP rate is. One recommendation that I would make that I never heard when I was on the board, nor have I heard that since I've left the board. I know the charter school systems throughout the state have an association. I'm not sure if our charter schools are part of that association. One thing that I would recommend, not only for our charter school, but every charter school in the state, since the state sets the dollar amount per student, you should be contacting your state representatives. We have 2 here in the city of Cape Coral. You need to express the concern that you have, because you're in a box by the mandated state per pupil rate that we are receiving in lieu of the charter school system. So the first thing that I would be doing is you need to be advocating on the state level to get that rate raised. And if you look over the last several years, it's been raised, but not that much. You take a look at inflation and the other elements of just running a school system. I don't think that rate has really kept pace. So my recommendation, that you at least have to start there to make sure that they hear your voice. So that would be my recommendation to the school board. The school board itself needs to have that conversation. Do they want some type of representation? We have 2 lobby firms that represent the city of Cape Coral in our state actually 3, because we have one at the federal level as well, 2 at the state level. So there's no reason that the charter school can't take a look at getting involved with a lobbying firm to go and lobby at the legislation for you as far as the per pupil rate that we receive. Thank you for coming today. I know you had to wait just like all the other speakers, so we appreciate you waiting to the time of citizens' input. And you're the future for our community. You're the one teaching our children. We appreciate everything that you do. If I had a wand, everyone would be paid more than what they are. So I think our teachers are a viable instrument in our community because you are really providing the education for the future leaders of our city. So thank you and everything you do. Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that the charter schools are an asset to our community, and I believe they raise the value on everyone's real estate, even if you don't have children. It's a magnet to our city. Young families move here knowing of the success of our charter school. So I see it as being very important that just like our public safety, we invest in that constantly to keep the record that we have, that we are known for. And I don't want to lose the great record we have with our charter schools. Maybe we need to think outside the box with some ideas to help these teachers. One can be maybe having a large event with Parks and Recs where all proceeds go to the teachers and advertise to the city as a whole that this event has a fee to go to, and some kind of entertainment or something, and have all the proceeds go directly to the teachers. But I think we need to think outside the box, and I want people that are watching to understand if you don't have children, it's still important. It's adding value to your property, and it's definitely a plus for our city, and we need to find a way to support this charter school. I have 2 children that go there, and they love it, and they're doing very well. And I want to make sure that other families have that same opportunity for their children and future children. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, anything else, Mr. City Manager, before we wrap it up? No. Just want to thank staff for bringing the information the last 2 days. It was very informative. We look forward to additional budget discussions, and I think the information that you brought forward will help us making better informed decisions as we go through this process. So thank you.
Thank you.
With that being said, item 7 is time and place of future meeting. We have a regular meeting, Cape Coral City Council, scheduled for Wednesday, January 24th, 2024, beginning at 4:30 p.m. in council chambers. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.